Chapter 1859. Standing high up in the sky, Nietian looked like a sharp sword that shone with a sharp light. After killing the two Lotus Lords with one sword, Nietian took a deep breath and his tensed face immediately relaxed. Nietian's aura instantly dissipated and his face turned slightly pale. In the origin fetus space, Fat Cat moved and the glaze runes around Nietian's body instantly flowed back into the glaze crystal. The glaze crystal returned to the glaze runes, but the size of the glaze crystal was much smaller than before and was now only the size of a baby's fist. Why did the glaze crystal become smaller? Nietian was stunned and couldn't help but ask. Fat Cat put away the glaze crystal and said, "The glaze crystal released the glaze runes and condensed the glazed forbidden boundary. It consumed a large amount of glazed chi, so of course it became smaller." Nietian's eyes narrowed and asked, "When can the glazed crystal recover?" "It can't." Little Fat Cat sighed and said, "Unless you can obtain the glazed demon pagoda and put the glazed crystal back into the glazed demon pagoda, then absorb the glazed chi in the glazed demon pagoda again. Only then will the glazed crystal recover." Nietian's face stiffened, and he was instantly speechless. The glazed demon pagoda was in the hands of the sacred leader, Hua Jioshin. How could he obtain it? "Fat, what is the glazed forbidden boundary that you just opened? How can it be so powerful? It's even stronger than the three great forbidden techniques." Nietian's eyes swept across the void, and he couldn't help but frown and ask curiously when he thought of the scene where he killed the two Lotus Lords with one sword. The glazed forbidden boundary is a powerful boundary that was created by the glazed demon lord. It can greatly increase a martial artist's battle strength. Fat Cat smiled and explained, "The glazed forbidden boundary needs the support of the glazed runes, and the glazed runes are condensed from glazed chi. Now that there isn't much glazed chi left in the glazed crystal, it's impossible for you to rely on the glazed forbidden boundary in the future." Nietian was stunned, and his face was full of black lines. He had indeed thought that if he used the three great forbidden techniques together with the glazed forbidden boundary, he would probably be able to fight a peak paramount god when he became a peak overgod. Now it seemed that he had thought too much. The glazed chi inside the glazed origin crystal was very limited, so it could only be used once. Nietian had to admit that the opening of the glaze ward this time had really saved his life. The battle just now seemed easy, but it was actually very dangerous. If it weren't for the glazed ward, Nietian wouldn't have been able to fend off a few Lotus Masters. Little Fat Cat was very quick-witted. It had long known that there were experts lurking around, so it had prepared the colored glaze forbidden world in advance. Nietian took a deep breath and muttered to himself, 5 of the 12 masters of the Black Lotus are dead. 9-inch Lotus Lord, 9. The 9 Lotus Lords, who had appeared first, were the first to die. Now, the 6 Lotus Lords, 8 Lotus Lords, 10 Lotus Lords, and 11 Lotus Lords were all dead. Nietian had seen the heads of the Lotuses before, and he had also dealt with the 7 Lords of the Slaughterhouse. After calming down, Nietian recalled what the 8 Lotus Masters had said and asked, "Little Fatty, the 8 Lotus Masters said that my god devil nascent embryo is the key to the 10th level. What does that mean?" "I don't know either." Fat Cat shook his head and said, "Nietian, you're in a very dangerous situation. Since your god-fiend nascent embryo can open the 10th floor, the Black Lotus King will definitely not let you go. These lords are dead, and I'm afraid there will be even more terrifying enemies. You have to be prepared." Nietian swallowed a mouthful of saliva with a helpless look on his face. At this moment, he was already riding a tiger and unable to back down. His only chance was to find the slaughter gate and enter the 10th floor. The following enemies would definitely be more terrifying than the last. Nietian really didn't have much time left. Nietian realized the urgency of the situation, and the worry in his eyes deepened. Following that, Nietian let everyone out of the 9 Superbs. Nietian. Rui Qinyu was very excited to see Nietian again. These days, she had seen people going in and out of the 9 Superbs, especially Di Shirtian and Jingchun. Every time they went out and came back, they were heavily injured. Rui Qinyu was very worried about Nietian, but she was too weak. Even if she went out, she wouldn't be of much help and would instead become a burden to Nietian. Qinyu, I'm fine. Nietian looked at Rui Qinyu and said with a faint smile. Rui Qinyu nodded and didn't say anything else. Nietian's gaze swept across the crowd. Without wasting any time, he explained the current situation to them. At the end, he said, "The Black Lotus King will definitely kill me. He won't let me leave the path of slaughter alive. Therefore, our only chance now is to enter the 10th floor of the path of slaughter." I didn't expect that the path of slaughter actually has a 10th floor. Demonic 2 was shocked after hearing Nietian's words. Nietian nodded and said, "There are 2 slaughter gates in the 9th floor. One of them leads to the 10th floor. What we need to do now is to find a slaughter gate that leads to the 10th floor." Everyone looked at Nietian with shock and doubt. Nietian didn't find everyone's reaction strange. He only told everyone about the current situation. "Big brother, I think I know where the slaughter gate is." At this time, the silent Long Outyin suddenly spoke. He took out a scroll and opened it, showing it to everyone. As the scroll opened, countless specks of light scattered out and quickly formed a strange image. Nietian took a step forward and looked at the image before him. His expression couldn't help but change as he exclaimed, "This is the path of slaughter." Countless specks of light flickered on the image. Its shape was extremely strange, but it was clearly divided into 9 floors. This was the path of slaughter. This is the structure of the path of slaughter. At this time, the fat cat let out a strange cry and directly came out from the origin embryo space. Its pair of blue eyes stared at the map in Long Outyin's hand with excitement. Nietian was stunned and couldn't react for a long time. "Fuck, what is this?" The fat cat's sudden appearance gave Long Outyin a fright, and he let out a strange cry. "Quick, tell me, where did you get this map?" The fat cat ignored Long Outyin's reaction and asked excitedly. Long Outyin was stunned for a moment before he reacted and said, "Teacher gave this to me and asked me to give it to you." The fat cat's eyes widened as it didn't understand Long Outyin's words. Nietian, however, reacted and stepped forward. He looked at Long Outyin and said, "Elder Hai asked you to give this to me?" "Yes." Long Outyin nodded heavily and said, "I also don't know where teacher got this scroll." Nietian stretched out his hand and took the map of the path of slaughter. He also had a strange expression on his face. He also couldn't understand why Yi Qinghai would have the map of the path of slaughter. Chapter 1860. After listening to Nietian's words, Fat Cat's face became gloomy and started to think about something. Nietian was also thinking. Yi Qinghai let him participate in the path of slaughter, let Long Outyin and the Waymo map enter the path of slaughter in advance, and even gave the map of the path of slaughter to Long Outyin. It was obvious that he wanted to tell him something. "Long Outyin, did old Hai say anything when he gave you the blueprint?" Nietian couldn't figure it out, so he turned to Long Outyin and asked, "Long Outyin, did old Hai say anything when he gave you the blueprint?" Long Outyin thought for a while and shook his head. "Teacher only gave me the map and told me to give it to you." Then he directly left and didn't say anything. Nietian frowned. Perhaps it was because they were in a hurry at that time. Yi Qinghai didn't have time to talk too much with Long Outyin. "Nietian, you just said that old Hai used to be the Slaughter King, right?" At this time, Fat Cat suddenly looked at Nietian and asked. "Yes." Nietian nodded. It seems that he obtained the map when he was in the path of slaughter. Fat Cat's frown slightly loosened and immediately looked at the map of the path of slaughter. Nietian also stared at the map, but he couldn't understand it at all. There were many complex runes that he didn't recognize. Sakura and the others also looked at the map helplessly. They couldn't understand it at all. Fat Cat, on the other hand, was very focused. It observed the map bit by bit, its expression constantly changing. It seemed to be marveling at the ingenuity of the path of slaughter structure. Nietian and the others didn't dare to disturb Fat Cat. They could only quietly wait at the side. "Found it!" After a long time, Fat Cat suddenly let out a strange cry. Immediately, The fat cat's paw emitted a ball of colored glass, chi, and integrated it into the map. The light and shadow of the ninth floor gradually became clear, and a map appeared. Everyone stared at the scene in front of them, and their eyes trembled violently. Fat Cat had actually drawn out the map of the ninth level alone. Nyation, give me a map scroll. Fat Cat shouted at Nyation excitedly. Nyation hurriedly took out a map scroll and handed it to Fat Cat. Fat Cat immediately erased the runes on the map scroll and extracted the runes and information of the world of the ninth level and projected it into the map scroll. Success! Fat Cat chuckled and tossed the map scroll to Nyation, but beads of sweat the size of beans were already appearing on his forehead. Nyation took the map scroll and opened it. The entire ninth level appeared in front of him. This is the complete map of the ninth floor. You can easily find the 2 slaughter gates. Fat Cat chuckled and kept the map of the slaughter gate. This was the map of a sacred tier artifact. Its value was indescribable. Nyation's eyes shone as he stared at the map. Soon, he found his current location and the location of the slaughter gate. However, the strange thing was he only found 1 slaughter gate. He couldn't find the location of the 2nd slaughter gate. This slaughter gate should be the exit of the 9th floor. Where's the other slaughter gate? Nyation was surprised, and he couldn't help but turn his gaze to Fat Cat. Fat Cat chuckled. Its fat body moved, and a ball of colored glass, chi, flowed out from its fingertips, which directly integrated into the map. Next, a strange scene appeared. At the top of the map, a faintly discernible whirlpool appeared, and directly below the whirlpool was a slaughter gate. The 2 slaughter gates are at the same location. Nyation was startled and immediately reacted. He couldn't help but exclaim. How could he have thought that the 2 slaughter gates of the 9th floor would be at the same location? Just that one was below and the other was above. Yes. Fat Cat nodded and said, this is called the reflection gate. It's a very special way of arranging things. Everyone else was shocked. They didn't understand what Fat Cat was talking about. Little Fat Cat raised its eyebrows, looking a little pleased with itself as it explained, the slaughter gate is actually a space-time gate. In order to conceal the slaughter gate's space-time aura, the 2 gates were placed together, one above and one below, one bright and one dark, forming a reflection of each other. The corner of Nyation's lips curled up. He immediately understood. The slaughter gate had a very strong space-time aura that couldn't be hidden. Placing the 2 slaughter gates together was actually using the space-time aura of one gate to hide the other. Moreover, this design was very ingenious. Who would have thought that the 2 slaughter gates would be placed together? It had to be said that the slaughtered demon Venerable was indeed a sly old fox. Nyation, you don't have much time left. Hurry up and set off. At this time, Fat Cat looked at Nyation and urged him. Nyation nodded slightly, and then let everyone return to the 9 extremities. He would have to rely on himself for the rest of the journey. Sakura and Jing Chen's injuries were very serious. They wouldn't be able to recover in a short period of time. The others were too weak and couldn't put up a fight against experts like the 12 Lotus Lords. In fact, even the current Nyation wouldn't be able to survive if he encountered the Black Lotus Lords. Nyation looked at the map, determined his location, and started running. Fortunately, the slaughter gate wasn't far from him. With his speed, he could reach the slaughter gate within a day. There weren't many cultivators who could enter the 9th level. In addition to the Black Lotus Lord's massacre, there weren't many people in the 9th level. Nyation's figure was like a bolt of lightning, running through the dense forest towards the slaughter gate. A day later, Nyation arrived outside a mountain range. Looking at the endless mountain peaks in front of him, the corner of his mouth curled into a comfortable smile. He muttered, the slaughter gate is about to arrive. At this moment, his face was slightly pale. He wasn't in his best condition to begin with. Coupled with the fact that he had been running nonstop, the energy in his body was greatly depleted. Fortunately, he had the earth vein origin. His recovery ability could be said to be abnormal. He could recover very quickly. Nyation didn't enter the mountain range directly. Instead, he rested for a while. He only stood up after his strength had more or less recovered. Next, he would arrive at the slaughter gate. Who knew what kind of opponents he would encounter? With Nietion's current strength, as long as he didn't encounter experts of the Lotus Lord's level, he could easily deal with them. However, he was worried that there might be experts guarding the slaughter gate. The Black Lotus Lord wasn't a fool. Of course he would guard against Nietion escaping from the slaughter gate. Nietion took a deep breath and prepared to set out. However, right at this moment, he suddenly sensed something. He couldn't help but frown and jerk his head back to look at the sky. High up in the sky, a black-robed figure stood there like an enormous mountain. His aura was boundless and boundless. Such a terrifying aura. Nietion's expression flickered, and he exclaimed inwardly, "Such a terrifying aura." The black-robed man's aura was very strong. It was actually no weaker than Yi Qinghai's. He was definitely a peak paramount god. Nietion's eyes trembled, but he forced himself to maintain a calm expression. Chapter 1861. Nietion looked at the black-clothed man who had suddenly appeared in midair, and his eyes trembled slightly. A god-devil nascent embryo, a member of the Nye clan. The black-robed man's features were tough and resolute, and his expression was grim as he looked coldly at Nietion. After calming down, Nietion asked in a low voice, "Who are you?" He didn't sense any killing intent from the black-clothed man, which calmed him down a little. Even though Nietion wasn't afraid of such a terrifying expert, he was still very worried. Even if Nietion could use the glass barrier, he wouldn't be able to fight against a peak paramount god. "I'm here to kill you," the black-clothed man said coldly. His voice was very calm, as if he was talking about family matters. Nietion narrowed his eyes and asked, "Then why haven't you done anything?" "It's not time yet," the black-clothed man said. "I need you to take me to the 10th level of the path of slaughter." Huh? Nietion was stunned. So this black-clothed man also wanted to go to the 10th level. After thinking for a moment, Nietion calmed down and said, "I want to know, who are you?" "That's not important." "I won't answer," the black-clothed man said. "Now, come with me. I'll take you to the gate of slaughter." Nietion's eyebrows furrowed again as he racked his brain. He guessed that the person in front of him wasn't the Black Lotus King. Otherwise, he wouldn't let him live, let alone take him to the gate of slaughter. If he wasn't the Black Lotus King, and he wasn't any weaker than Yi Qinghai, then who could he be? "Don't think too much. I won't kill you now." The black-clothed man glanced at Nietion and added, "At least not before we enter the 10th level." Nietion's eyes flickered. Then he followed the black-clothed man. He didn't have time to think about anything else in the current situation. He could only follow the black-clothed man and wait until he entered the 10th level. The black-clothed man's figure was very fast, and he deliberately maintained a distance from Nietion. He did not get too close, nor did he get too far away. After a while, Nietion and the black-clothed man entered the mountain range and soon arrived at a vast valley. Nietion gazed at the valley from afar and saw a stone door on a high platform. It was the slaughter gate. This slaughter gate led to the outside world. As long as one entered it, they would be able to leave the path of slaughter. Nietion raised his head and looked into the sky. The corners of his lips curled up as he thought to himself, "The slaughtering gate to the 10th floor is in midair. Brat, you go over." At this time, the black-clothed man looked at Nietion and said lightly. Nietion was stunned and almost suspected that he had heard wrongly. For the black-clothed man to let him walk over like this was simply sending him to his death. Looking from the outside, the valley was dead silent. There was no one there. But even an idiot could figure out that there must be an expert hiding in the valley. "Don't worry. I won't let anything happen to you." The black-clothed man spoke in a low voice. His eyes exuded a strong sense of confidence, and his entire body emitted a sharp aura. "Swordsman." In an instant, Nietion felt a strong sword intent from the black-clothed man. He couldn't help but frown. He didn't think that the black-clothed man in front of him was a swordsman. "Okay, I'll go." Nietion nodded his head. He had no choice but to go. Taking a deep breath, Nietion forced himself to remain calm. Then his silhouette flashed. Like a sword, he flew towards the valley. His silhouette descended and stood about 100 meters away from the slaughter gate. Boom, boom, boom. Just then, several powerful auras descended from the sky and landed in the valley. They were like mountains, emitting a strong and oppressive aura. There's an ambush! Nietion's heart sank as he glanced at the three black-clothed men around him. His face was full of shock. These three black-clothed cultivators had powerful auras. They were even stronger than the previous 6 and 8 Lotus Lords. The Black Lotus King would definitely prevent Nietion from leaving the slaughter gate. Therefore, it wasn't strange for him to set up an ambush here. Just then, another 2 silhouettes appeared above the valley. Their auras were extremely powerful, far surpassing the other black-clothed cultivators. It's this guy. Nietion raised his head and immediately recognized the 2 silhouettes in the sky. One of them was the head of the 12 Lotus Lords. Boss, is this the kid with the fiend god embryo? The black-clothed cultivator beside the head of the lotus smiled coldly. His sinister eyes roamed around Nietion's body. The head of the lotus nodded and looked at Nietion. Stinking brat, you're really not simple. You actually managed to come here. You guys have been waiting for me for a long time. Nietion faked a calm facade and said with a faint smile. Right now, he had no choice but to trust the black-clothed swordsman outside. Kid, it seems like old 6 and the rest are already dead. Your performance was really amazing. The head of the Lotus Cold spoke. The malice in her eyes intensified. She then looked at the black-clothed man beside her and said, Second brother, this kid is not simple. 5 of our brothers have already died at his hands. The head of the Lotus was right. Of the 12 Lotus Lords, 5 had died because of Nietion. This was absolutely unprecedented in the history of the Black Lotus sect. All 5, do it! The black-clothed man beside the head of the Lotus was the 2nd Lotus Lord. He sneered and looked at the other black-clothed man below him. Nietion finally understood. The 5 black-clothed men he was facing were the head of the Lotus, the 2nd Lotus Lord, the 3rd Lotus Lord, the 4th Lotus Lord, and the 5th Lotus Lord. The 5 Lotus Lords were mobilized at the same time. This was something that had never happened in the history of the Black Lotus sect. You kill my brothers. You deserve to die. Lord 5th Lotus shouted in a low voice. His figure suddenly moved, and he directly struck out with his palm. Instantly, the entire valley shook. The vast and mighty palm shadows descended and pressed down on Nietion. Nietion's eyebrows furrowed slightly as star soul wings appeared on his back. With a stomp of his feet, he retreated at full speed. Lord 5th Lotus was a late paramount god, so even if Nietion used his 3 forbidden magics, he wouldn't be able to fight him. However, Lord 5th Lotus was simply too powerful. Although Nietion was fast, he was still a step too slow. As the terrifying palm shadow descended, Nietion immediately felt a tremendous force. His chest tightened, and he actually felt as if he couldn't breathe. What are you waiting for, you bastard? Nietion shouted angrily as he looked out into the valley. Right at this moment, a strand of powerful sword insight suddenly arrived, and it directly shattered the palm image in midair. Who is it? The sudden scene caused the 5th Lotus Master to be quite startled. He couldn't help but cry out in alarm. I'm here to kill you, a growling voice said, and a sword image appeared. Before Lord 5th Lotus could even react, he was inundated by the sword and was killed in the blink of an eye. Nietion's jaw dropped as he looked up at the black-clothed swordsman. Only now did he realize how terrifying he was. The fact that he could kill a late paramount god in the blink of an eye showed just how terrifying he was. Chapter 1862. Protector Yongji. Nietion was stunned when he heard the Lotus Head and 2nd Lotus Head's cries. He immediately understood the identity of the black-robed swordsman. In the Black Lotus, other than the Black Lotus King and the 12 Lotus Heads, there were 2 other protectors, Protector Yin and Protector Yang. Yi Qinghai's divine wind was Protector Yin, and this black-robed swordsman was Protector Yang. No wonder this person was so strong. He was Protector Yang, who had the same status as Yi Qinghai. Lotus Head, long time no see. Protector Yang Ji smiled faintly as he stared at the Lotus Head with a sharp gaze. Guardian Yangji, have you gone mad? The lotus head was stunned for a few seconds before it finally reacted. It roared angrily, and its entire body was trembling. He never expected that Protector Yangji would appear at this moment and kill the fifth lotus head in one move. Do you think I'm crazy? Protector Yangji laughed as his expression darkened. Boss, Protector Yangji betrayed the Black Lotus King. Second Lotus Head's eyes trembled as he spoke. His face was filled with killing intent. The Lotus Head's expression changed. He stared at Protector Yangji and said, Protector Yangji, do you really want to go against the Black Lotus King? I just want to enter the 10th floor, Protector Yangji said cold, then pointed at Nie Tian and said, he can let me enter the 10th floor. If you want to kill him, you have to get my permission. It's that simple. The Lotus Head's expression darkened, then turned sinister and said, Lord Protector, it seems like we will have to experience your strength today. Protector Yangji laughed coldly and said arrogantly, if you want to experience it, you can. The fifth Lotus Head is an example. Arrogant, the Lotus Head roared. Then he moved and signaled with his eyes. The four Lotus Heads surrounded Protector Yangji. Kid from the Nye family, leave these guys to me. You open the entrance to the 10th floor. Protector Yangji glanced at Nie Tian before his figure moved and flew tens of thousands of meters into the air. The four Lotus Heads did not dare to be careless and followed Protector Yangji. Protector Yangji was extremely powerful, so Lotus Head and the others had to work together. Otherwise, they might be killed by Protector Yangji one by one. As for Nie Tian, he was just a small shrimp in their eyes. It wouldn't be too late to deal with him later. Nie Tian frowned slightly and looked up at the sky. He could not help but worry for Yangji. Protector Yangji was very strong, far stronger than the Lotus Head and the others. However, Nie Tian had seen it before. When these Lotus Masters joined forces, their battle prowess would increase greatly. That was especially true of Chief Lotus and Second Lotus, who were on the verge of being peak paramount gods. Even if they fought one-on-one, they could still hold their own against Dharma Protector Yang Polarity. Boom! Protector Yangji stood in midair, releasing a terrifying sword aura. His entire body was like a huge, sharp sword, standing between the heavens and the earth, his aura surging and terrifying. Let's kill him together. The Lotus Head roared, and the four Lotus Masters joined forces. Black energy billowed up into the sky. An enormous black lotus appeared. Nie Tian could sense the immense pressure weighing down on him, which filled him with a very bad premonition. Protector Yangji slashed out with his sword, unleashing an enormous sword image that pierced through the black lotus. But at the same time, he was forced backward. As expected, the combined power of the four Lotus Masters was superior to that of Protector Yangji. Nie Tian's eyes glittered, and he turned his attention away from the battle in the sky, focusing on the valley below. Drawing on his holographic god designs, he began to sense the energy in the air. At this moment, Nie Tian could clearly sense the space-time aura of the Slaughter Gate. Following this aura, he carefully sensed the position of the other reflection gate. It's a warding spell. After a long time, Nie Tian furrowed his brows. He discovered that there was a powerful restrictive spell between the two killing gates, and the space between them was filled with bizarre magical symbols. Nie Tian, try using your blood. The fat cat's voice rang out, reminding Nie Tian. Okay, Nie Tian replied. After that, numerous streams of blood shot out from his fingertips, and in the next instant, a strange scene occurred. The blood of the fiend god flowed in the air, and the warding spell in the air instantly sensed it. An intense restrictive aura was released, and black-colored warding spell runes appeared in the air. Staring at the warding spell runes in the air, Nie Tian's expression stiffened, and he was momentarily speechless. He could sense an extremely intense, killing intent from the warding spell runes, and it actually caused him to tremble slightly. Nie Tian continued. The fat cat's voice rang out once more, and there was a hint of excitement in it. Nie Tian reacted, and after that, blood gushed out from his fingertips. Streams of crimson blood could be sensed by the black warding spell runes. These runes are so strange. Why is the killing intent so intense? Yet Tian was puzzled. He could sense that the blood in his body had become restless, as if there was a force that was guiding him. Yet Tian didn't stop. The blood in his body gushed out even more violently, and the warding spell runes rapidly appeared. Following the direction of the warding spell runes, Tian saw that tens of meters in the air, there was a door of darkness formed from black runes. Another slaughter gate. Tian's expression changed as he stared at the dark gate, and he cried out in alarm. Without a doubt, this door of darkness was the slaughtering gate that led to the 10th floor. At this moment, Tian's face was somewhat pale, but his expression was one of excitement. He tried to sense it, but discovered that the door of darkness didn't have the slightest bit of space-time aura. Tian, although this door has appeared, the warding spell hasn't been broken. You won't be able to enter the 10th floor. The fat cat furrowed her brows, as if she was pondering over something. Tian's figure flickered as he tried to approach the door of darkness. However, he was restrained by the powerful warding spell, and he couldn't get close. He frowned as he stared at the door of darkness with a complicated expression. He had already found the entrance, but he couldn't get close. Just at this moment, a miserable scream rang out in the air. Protector Yang Ji's figure flashed past, leaving a trail of blood in the air. Against the alliance of the 4 Lotus Lords, Protector Yang Ji was still a notch weaker. When Tian saw this scene, he couldn't help but feel nervous. If Protector Yang Ji was killed, he would be next. In front of the 4 Lotus Lords, he didn't even have the slightest ability to resist. Let's try using the Fiend God Force. Tian took a deep breath. He suddenly recalled the words of the 8 Lotus Lords. Since his divine demon nascent embryo was the key to opening the 10th floor, he would try using the Fiend God Force to see if he could break the warding spell runes. When he thought of this, Tian immediately got to work. He released the Fiend God Force from his body. Like tentacles, they enveloped the warding spell runes. At this moment, Tian possessed late-stage high god strength. His divine demon nascent embryo had awakened 128 strands of the Fiend God divine power. Chapter 1863. Looking at the shattered restrictive symbols, Tian's eyes flickered, and he exclaimed, "It worked! The power of gods and demons could indeed break through the runes." Tian instantly became excited. He could feel the blood in his body burning. He started to use the power of gods and demons to attack the runes. However, his speed was very slow. After all, the power of gods and demons was too little. The deeper the runes were, the harder it was to break through. Protector Yang Ji Dai. The Lotus Head's ruthless voice sounded in the sky. Terrifying, killing intent surged around her. She struck out with her palm towards Protector Yang Ji. Protector Yang Ji's injuries were not light. His entire body was covered in blood. However, he still persisted to buy time for Tian. Boom! Protector Yang Ji barely managed to stab out with his sword, dodging the Lotus Head's attack. He retreated several thousand meters and stabilized himself. His eyes trembled as if he was thinking of something. The sword intent around his body surged. It did not weaken in the slightest. However, his eyes flickered as if he was hesitating. Do I still have to use that move? Protector Yang Ji thought to himself. The way he looked at the Lotus Head also changed. He still had a killing move. However, this killing move was originally prepared for the Black Lotus King. If he used it on the Lotus Head and the others, he would not be willing. However, he could no longer hold on. After thinking for a while, Protector Yang Ji's eyes suddenly became resolute. The sword intent around his body surged crazily. The terrifying sword intent spread out and the space was instantly tightened. Now, the Lotus Head could feel that something was wrong. She could not help but frown. She then retreated, not daring to get close to Protector Yang Ji. The other Lotus Heads also felt the danger and retreated one after another. Protector Yang Ji saw the Lotus Heads retreating. His figure flashed, and he swept his sword horizontally, charging towards them. The lotus head did not dare to face Protector Yang Ji's sword intent head-on. She retreated again and was forced to retreat tens of thousands of meters away. However, at this moment, the sword intent around Protector Yang Ji retreated. His aura also retracted in an instant. He's bluffing. The lotus head's eyes darkened. She immediately understood. She then roared and struck out with her palm. Protector Yang Ji frowned. He had indeed used a feint just now to force back the 4 Lotus Lords. However, if the Lotus leader pushed him too far, he would really choose to fight to the death. Lotus head, 4 against 1. Isn't that a little too much? Just at this moment, a majestic voice rang out in the sky. Following that, a terrifying palm shadow appeared, blocking the fatal palm strike of the lotus head. The head of the lotus froze for a moment, then stabilized its body and stared at the sky. In its vision, a black-robed figure appeared, exuding an aura that was as vast as the mountains and as vast as the seas. Every step it took was like the surging tides of the sea, surging violently. When the lotus head saw the face of the black-robed man, her expression changed, and she exclaimed, "Extreme Een Protector!" The person who had appeared in front of him was actually Protector Extreme Een. When Yetian heard the words Extreme Een Protector, he suddenly looked up and saw a familiar figure. It was Yi Qinghai. Seeing Yi Qinghai's sudden appearance, Yetian's eyes lit up, and he felt much more at ease. "Extreme Een Protector, what do you want?" The lotus head calmed down and stared at Yi Qinghai. "You betrayed us too? I'm the same as Protector Yang Ji. I just want to enter the 10th floor." Yi Qinghai smiled faintly, then glanced at Protector Yang Ji. The two of them smiled at each other. You too?" Seeing this, the lotus head completely understood. Protector Yang Ji and Protector Extreme Een had colluded long ago to enter the 10th floor together. "It's too late for you to understand now." Yi Qinghai laughed coldly. His silhouette flickered as he slammed out a palm towards the head of the lotus. The lotus head was stunned for a moment. By the time he reacted, it was already too late. Bang! With a muffled sound, the lotus head's figure was directly sent flying, heavily smashing into a mountain range. A small mountain was directly smashed into pieces, causing a huge wave of soil to rise up. The lotus head's strength was originally below Yi Qinghai's. Moreover, he had just fought with Protector Yang Ji and had expended a lot of energy. Coupled with his slow reaction speed, he was directly sent flying by Yi Qinghai. "Your leader is gone. Do you still want to continue staying here?" Yi Qinghai smiled coldly, his cold gaze sweeping across the other 3 lotus heads. The second lotus head and the others were stunned for a moment, then their figures moved and they directly left. A group of people who know how to adapt to the circumstances. Yi Qinghai looked at the 3 lotus heads and couldn't help but smile. "Brother Yi." At this moment, Protector Yang Ji looked at Yi Qinghai and calmly called out, "Are you all right?" Yi Qinghai came to Protector Yang Ji's side and inserted a wave of Yuanli into the latter's body. The latter's complexion slightly improved. When Yetian saw the scene in the sky, he couldn't help but be stunned. He didn't expect that Yi Qinghai and Protector Yang Ji would actually know each other, and it seemed like their relationship was quite good. Yi Qinghai and Protector Yang Ji's figures directly landed in the valley and came to Yetian's side. "Young master." Yi Qinghai saw Yetian and solemnly called out, his expression extremely moved. "Elder Hai, what's going on?" Yetian slightly stopped, took a deep breath, and looked at Yi Qinghai. The seal of the door of darkness was still not opened, but Yetian urgently needed to rest. His blood qi had been consumed too much, and his divine demon force was gradually unable to keep up. "This is my friend, Guiwu Quang Sha." Yi Qinghai lightly smiled and said as he patted Protector Yang Ji's shoulder. "Hey, what's his name?" Yetian cried out in shock, his face stiffening. "I'm called Guiwu Quang Sha." Protector Yang Ji took a step forward and lightly smiled. His gaze swept across Yetian's body and said, "Kid from the Nye clan, you're really not bad. The Wind and Cloud Alliance Master has a good grandson." Yetian was stunned for a few seconds. His eyes flickered for a long time, before he spoke again and asked, "Are you really Guwu Kwangsha?" "Huh?" Guwu Kwangsha was stunned for a moment. Then he smiled and said, "Why? Do you know me?" Nyetian's throat gulped. He didn't know Guwu Kwangsha, but the reason he entered the domain of darkness this time was because of Guwu Kwangsha. "Do you really know me?" When Guwu Kwangsha saw the expression on Nyetian's face, he was astonished. However, he couldn't remember where he had seen Nyetian before. "Lord Guwu, wait a moment. I'll let you see two people. You'll know everything after that." Nyetian forcefully suppressed the excitement in his heart. 9 extremes appeared in his hand, and he transmitted a message to Guwu Kan and Jian Jingyan. Guwu Kan and Jian Jingyan came out from the 9 extremes. When the two of them saw Guwu Kwangsha, they were stunned and couldn't speak for a long time. "Teacher, it's really you." After being stunned for a dozen seconds, Guwu Kan looked at Guwu Kwangsha and let out a weird cry, as though he was about to cry. Guwu Kan. Guwu Kwangsha was also incomparably excited and only reacted after a long time. Chapter 1864. Half a day later, the master-disciple duo finally calmed down. "Guwu Kan, why are you here?" At this moment, Guwu Kwangsha furrowed his brows as he looked at Guwu Kan in doubt. Guwu Kan smiled mischievously as he recounted how he met Nyetian, as well as everything that happened after that. Guwu Kan was dumbstruck as he listened. He never imagined that the matter would be so complicated. After Guwu Kan finished, Guwu Kwangsha looked at Nyetian with shock on his face as he said, "Nyetian, I never imagined that it was Jian Qingqi who asked you to find me. Now isn't the time to talk too much. I'll tell you the details in the future." Nyetian nodded his head as he looked at Yi Qinghai and asked, "Old Hai, how did you and Lord Guwu get to know each other? And how did you enter the path of slaughter?" Yi Qinghai glanced at Guwu Kwangsha and said with a smile, "Brother Guwu and I are good friends. This time, Brother Guwu came to the domain of darkness together with me. However, we didn't come at the same time, but one after the other." Subsequently, Yi Qinghai recounted his experiences. It turned out that after he left the Heaven Realm, he found Guwu Kwangsha and made an agreement with him to enter the domain of darkness. In order to deceive others, the two of them came to the domain of darkness one after the other and entered from different places. After that, the two of them became the yin-yang protectors of the Black Lotus. In front of the Black Lotus King, they were naturally strangers who didn't know each other. Yi Qinghai's goal in coming to the domain of darkness was naturally to search for Nie Fenghua's whereabouts. However, he didn't gain much from hiding beside the Black Lotus King for several years. However, he knew that the Black Lotus King didn't know where Nie Fenghua was. As for the reason why Yi Qinghai wanted to let Nyetian enter the path of slaughter, it was purely to ensure his safety. He knew that the Black Lotus King wanted to kill Nyetian, so entering the path of slaughter was a safer method for Nyetian. Yi Qinghai hoped that Nyetian would become the Slaughter King because he wanted Nyetian to join the Black Lotus. The two of them could search for Nie Fenghua's whereabouts together. However, the development of the matter exceeded Yi Qinghai's expectations. He never imagined that the Black Lotus King would actually want to use Nyetian to open the 10th layer of the Path of Massacre. Fortunately, Nyetian's strength far exceeded the Black Lotus King's expectations. In the end, the Lotus Masters all died at Nyetian's hands. The Black Lotus King had allowed Yi Qinghai and Guwu Kwangsha to enter the path of slaughter for the sake of killing Nyetian. However, he never imagined that this would instead facilitate the reunion of Nyetian and the others. When Yi Qinghai was done, he looked at Nyetian with sparkling eyes and smilingly said, "Young lord, it has been so many years since we last met. I did not expect that your strength has already reached late-stage High God realm. Truly amazing." Guwu Kwangsha also smiled and said, "Perhaps in a few years, your strength will catch up to Guwu Kan and Jian Jingyan." When Jian Jingyan and Guwu Kan heard this, they couldn't help but look at each other helplessly. Guwu Kan looked at Guwu Kwangsha and said with curled lips, "Teacher, although Nyetian's current strength is very weak, his battle prowess is extremely great. Even if Jian Jingyun and I work together, we still won't be his opponent. How is that possible? Gui Wu Kuang Sha was stunned. He let out a strange cry, and his face was filled with disbelief. Even with his knowledge of martial arts, he did not dare to believe that a late-stage high god was actually more terrifying than two peak over-god experts. Moreover, Jian Jingyun and Gui Wu Kan were both genius fighters. Their strength was much greater than fighters of the same level. If Nie Tian's battle prowess was really as Gui Wu Kan said, then it would be too terrifying. Teacher, do I look like I'm joking? Gui Wu Kan's face was gloomy. He naturally did not feel good when he personally admitted that he was weaker than others. Lord Gui Wu, Nie Tian's strength is indeed very strong. Gui Wu Kan and I are not his opponent. Jian Jingyun took a step forward and said, if Nie Tian goes all out, he can instantly kill an early-stage over-god expert. I'm afraid he can even fight an ordinary mid-stage over-god expert. This, Gui Wu Kuang Sha and Yi Qinghai gasped at the same time. Both of them widened their eyes and were speechless for a long time. There were people who had lived for hundreds of thousands of years. They had seen countless genius fighters in their lifetime, but none of them could compare to Nie Tian. The fiend god nascent embryo is really terrifying. After a long time, Gui Wu Kuang Sha looked at Nie Tian and said, your father Nie Fenghua's talent was already known as the #1 genius in the 9 major domains. Compared to him, you are several times stronger. In the 9 major domains, those who could step into the over-god realm before the age of 10,000 were all peerless monsters. Nie Fenghua was known as the #1 monster in the 9 major domains. But now, Nie Tian was only in his 20s. Even if his previous life's age was included, he was only a little over 200 years old. 200 years old, not to mention a god realm expert. Even in the plain world, this age was very young. But now, Nie Tian already had the strength to contend with an over-god expert. Such talent was enough to make one's hair stand on end. Young master, your future achievements will definitely be more terrifying than masters. Yi Qinghai said with a face full of shock. Nie Tian smiled faintly. His face was very calm. In fact, he was very dissatisfied with his current strength. Even if he used the 3 great forbidden skills, his strongest battle strength could barely fight against a weaker mid-stage over-god expert. If he encountered a stronger mid-stage or late-stage over-god expert, he would not be able to put up a fight. Counting on his fingers, Nie Tian and Mo Rushi had already been separated for a year. He didn't have much time left. He had to improve his strength as soon as possible, because the enemies he would face in the future were likely to be half-step saints. There was also Cher, the inescapable net and emperor of the netherworld behind her. Nie Tian didn't want Cher to stay in the inescapable net forever. When he was strong enough, he would definitely get Cher out of the inescapable net. Every time he thought of this, Nie Tian felt a great deal of pressure. The burden on his shoulders was too heavy, so he had no choice but to become stronger in a short time. At this time, Nie Tian suddenly thought of something and asked, Elder Hai, I'm very curious. Why hasn't the Black Lotus King shown himself? Since Nie Tian's death in the Path of Slaughter would allow the Black Lotus King to open the 10th floor, why didn't the Black Lotus King show himself? With his strength, killing Nie Tian would be very easy. Yi Qinghai frowned, shook his head, and said, the Black Lotus King has never personally entered the Path of Slaughter. I also don't know why. Nie Tian had a puzzled expression, but he didn't think too much about it. He felt that his strength was almost fully recovered, so he continued to break the restriction runes. Bang, bang, bang. Divine and demonic energy bombarded the restriction runes, and the runes crumbled bit by bit. The dark door began to release a faint space-time aura. As the restriction runes were broken bit by bit, dense beads of sweat appeared on Nie Tian's forehead. Chapter 1865. The restriction runes were broken, and the door of darkness opened. Nie Tian's expression was extremely excited. He looked at the space-time door in the sky with a burning gaze that was difficult to conceal. As long as he entered the space-time door, he would be able to enter the 10th floor of the Path of Slaughter. Boom! However, At the instant when the door of darkness opened, the space around it suddenly trembled. After that, a black-robed figure appeared. The aura he exuded was boundlessly majestic. Just standing there, it was as though the waves of the ocean were surging violently, giving off a feeling of boundlessness. Nietian suddenly raised his head and looked at the black-clothed figure in the sky. When he sensed the latter's aura, he couldn't help but suck in a mouthful of cold air. His expression changed. Killing aura. An incomparably violent killing aura. Nietian felt an extremely terrifying killing aura from the black-clothed figure. He had seen many cruel and bloodthirsty people. However, no one's killing aura could be compared to the one in front of him. The black-clothed figure in the sky was like a huge killing vortex. His entire body was emitting a terrifyingly sharp, killing aura. It gave people an extremely strong, oppressive feeling, almost suffocating them. Moreover, the killing aura on this person's body had concealed his powerful, imposing manner. The aura on his body was also very strong. One could clearly feel that he was much stronger than Guiwu Guangsha and Yi Qinghai. Guiwu Guangsha and Yi Qinghai, who were beside Nietian, were stunned when they saw the face of the black-clothed figure. Their faces immediately stiffened, and they couldn't say a word. Two protectors, you really have big guts. You actually dare to betray me. At this time, the black-clothed figure opened his mouth. His voice was majestic, and his killing aura was very heavy. His entire body was surging with extremely sharp, killing aura. The entire world was filled with an incomparably bloody, killing aura. When Nietian heard the person speaking, he immediately reacted. This person was the master of the Black Lotus, the Black Lotus King. The Black Lotus King had finally appeared. Nietian's reaction was very fast. He immediately let Jian Jingyun and Guiwu Chan return to the Nine Extremities. Black Lotus King, didn't you never enter the path of slaughter? Why are you here now? Yi Qinghai calmed down and looked at the Black Lotus King with a playful expression. At the same time, he transmitted his voice to Nietian. Young master, Guiwu and I will block the Black Lotus King. You enter the 10th floor. Nietian furrowed his brows. He could clearly sense that the Black Lotus King was stronger than both Yi Qinghai and Guiwu Guangsha. The latter two were absolutely not a match for the Black Lotus King. Among all the experts Nietian had seen, only the 9 gods of calamity, Nie Dao, and a few others had the strength to contend against the Black Lotus King. Extreme Yin Protector, Extreme Yang Protector, I've specially created the positions of Yin and Yang Protector in the Black Lotus for the two of you. Your positions are even higher than the 12 Lotus Masters. The Black Lotus King spoke in a deep voice that sounded like a sigh from hell. I truly never expected that all of you would betray me in the end. The Black Lotus King originally didn't have a Yin and Yang Protector. After Yi Qinghai and Guiwu Guangsha appeared, the Black Lotus King created the 2 protector positions in order to make them swear loyalty to him. Yi Qinghai laughed and said, Black Lotus King, you and I have always schemed against each other. How can this be considered betrayal? Indeed. The Black Lotus Monarch smiled and said, You came here to inquire about Nie Fenghua. I kept you alive so that I can borrow your power to return to the 9 realms one day. The two of us were originally using each other, so it is indeed laughable to say that we betrayed each other. Nietian couldn't help but frown when he heard the Black Lotus King's words. He didn't quite understand. Yi Qinghai laughed at this time and said, Black Lotus King, you really are related to the 9 gods of calamity. The 9 gods of calamity. The Black Lotus King's expression suddenly changed when he heard this name and said in a deep voice, a treacherous villain. Nietian's expression changed again. It seemed that there was a great grudge between the Black Lotus King and the 9 gods of calamity. The Black Lotus King's resentment was very heavy, and he wanted nothing more than to skin the 9 gods of calamity alive. Black Lotus King, I really want to know what kind of grudge you have with the 9 gods of calamity. Yi Qinghai faintly smiled, and his eyes slightly trembled as he asked. The Black Lotus King glanced at Nietian and said with a smile, There is no harm in telling you. My true identity is the former president of the Holy Parliament. Yi Qinghai and Guiwu Guangsha were startled and exclaimed at the same time, Bu Wu Qinxiu. The Holy Parliament was the peak power of the Nine Realms. The Nine Gods of Calamity was the current president of the Holy Parliament. Before her, the previous president was Bu Wu Qinxiu. Bu Wu Qinxiu was the president of the Holy Parliament hundreds of thousands of years ago. At that time, the Holy Parliament wasn't as powerful as it was now. It developed to its current stage by relying on Bu Wu Qinxiu alone. Bu Wu Qinxiu was a legend of the Nine Realms. Yi Qinghai, Guiwu Guangsha, and the others were all juniors in front of him. However, when the Holy Parliament was at its peak, Bu Wu Qinxiu suddenly announced that he would no longer be the president of the Holy Parliament and would pass the position to his disciple, the Nine Gods of Calamity. After that, Bu Wu Qinxiu disappeared and no one ever saw him again. Who would have thought that the Black Lotus King of the Domain of Darkness would claim to be Bu Wu Qinxiu? This was too unimaginable. Impossible. A moment later, Yi Qinghai calmed down and roared, "You can't be Bu Wu Qinxiu." Guiwu Guangsha's eyes also sank as he said, Bu Wu Qinxiu is a character from hundreds of thousands of years ago. If he was still alive, I'm afraid he would already be 1,000,000 years old. There is also a limit to the lifespan of a deity realm expert. Generally speaking, each major realm in the deity realm could increase a martial artist's lifespan by 100,000 years. The ultimate lifespan of a peak supreme god was 600,000 years. Therefore, it was impossible for a martial artist to live close to 1,000,000 years. Is it impossible? The Black Lotus King laughed crazily. His body moved and turned into a cloud of black chi, condensing into a black lotus in the air. Seeing this scene, everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. Their faces were incomparably shocked. The Black Lotus King's martial body disappeared into thin air and turned into a black lotus. In order to survive, I have already abandoned my martial body and used a black lotus to replace my physical martial body to bear my current soul. The Black Lotus King's voice sounded. The black lotus slightly moved and returned to its human form. Now you should believe me, right? I am Bu Wu Qinxiu. Yi Qinghai and the others were still dumbfounded. If a martial artist abandoned his martial body and replaced it with something else, in theory, he could indeed obtain a longer lifespan. But in this way, it was difficult to estimate what kind of impact it would have on the martial artist. You abandoned your martial body and turned into a black lotus. You must have suffered a lot. At this time, Nietian, who had been silent until now, opened his mouth and asked, "Why did you do this?" Chapter 1866. Pay the price. The Black Lotus King's entire body trembled when he uttered these 4 words in a deep and murderous tone. Clearly, he was extremely furious. Nietian frowned. He couldn't understand what Calamity 9 had done to Black Lotus King to make him so angry that he was willing to give up his martial physique for revenge. You must be very curious about what Calamity 9 has done to me. Black Lotus King calmed down after a while and said, "I'll tell you now so that you know what kind of despicable person Calamity 9 is." Nietian's gaze sharpened and flickered as he waited for Black Lotus King to continue. Black Lotus King's expression was as gloomy as still water. He seemed to have thought of something and spoke after a long while. Calamity 9 was my disciple. Although his talent wasn't top-notch, he was very scheming and I trusted him deeply. Several 100,000 years ago, I felt that I was reaching the end of my lifespan and was considering who to pass the position of the Sacred Council President to. Although I trusted Calamity 9 back then, he was too weak and didn't have enough prestige. It would be very difficult to convince the masses if he became the Sacred Council President. At that time, he gave me something. It was this thing that changed me completely. What is it? Yi Qinghai and Ghost Marshal Guangsha were stunned and exclaimed at the same time. The path of slaughter, Black Lotus King said solemnly as his expression became even gloomier. The path of slaughter? Nietian and the others were stunned and their expressions stiffened. They didn't expect that Black Lotus King had obtained the Path of Slaughter from Calamity 9. But it was very strange that Calamity 9 had given the Path of Slaughter to Black Lotus King. This was a good thing, so why did Black Lotus King hate Calamity 9 so much? Black Lotus King calmed down a little and said, Calamity 9 told me that as long as I absorbed the Slaughter runes in the Path of Slaughter, I would be able to break through the God Realm and ascend to the Sage Realm. At that time, I trusted Calamity 9, so I didn't think too much about it and directly absorbed the Slaughter runes. But later, I found out that the Slaughter runes were an extremely terrifying curse. I was devoured by the curse and imprisoned in the Path of Slaughter by Calamity 9. Calamity 9 forced me to hand over the position of president of the Holy Assembly to him, and he even used despicable means to absorb my power every day. Until one day, I finally broke free from the control of the Slaughter runes and became the master of the Path of Slaughter. I finally broke free from 9 Calamity Goddess control, but I was no longer a match for Huajioshin at that time, so I could only bring the Path of Slaughter to the realm of darkness. After the Black Lotus King finished speaking, the muscles on his face trembled incessantly, and his terrible anger surged. Nietian and the others were astonished. They didn't expect the Black Lotus King and Huajioshin to have such a grudge. As the disciple of the Black Lotus King, Huajioshin had actually used a curse to imprison the Black Lotus King for the position of president. Such an action was truly sinister. No wonder the Black Lotus King hated the 9 gods of calamity so much. Nietian became cold. He then looked at the Black Lotus King and said, After you came to the realm of darkness, you established the Black Lotus, right? The Black Lotus King nodded and said coldly, I will definitely make 9 Calamity Goddess pay for everything she did to me. The Black Lotus King frowned as he sensed the killing intent around the Black Lotus King. At the same time, he also sensed an extremely intense slaughter energy in the latter's body. If I'm not wrong, you haven't completely broken free from the control of the Slaughter runes, right? The Black Lotus King was stunned for a moment before he smiled and said, as expected of someone with the Fiend God origin embryo. You can even see this. The Black Lotus King sneered and said, You're right. The Slaughter runes in my body are still there. Moreover, after I gave up my martial body, the Slaughter runes have become even stronger. In order to suppress the Slaughter runes, I must absorb a large amount of bloodline power. At this point, Nietian frowned. He had already figured it out. He looked at the Black Lotus King and said in a cold tone, In order to suppress the Slaughter runes, you set up the Path of Slaughter, attracting a large number of cultivators to participate and then letting them die on the Path of Slaughter. Then you can absorb their bloodline power after they die, right? The Black Lotus King was stunned once more. He then sneered and said, So what? The Path of Slaughter is just one of my methods. When you die on the Path of Slaughter, I can absorb your bloodline power. Moreover, didn't you all enter the Path of Slaughter with a request? Nietian's face suddenly sank. The so-called Path of Slaughter was simply a trap set up by the Black Lotus King. When the people of the 9 domains entered the domain of darkness, they would be affected by the fiendish blood energy and only think about slaughter. Then, they would enter the Gloom Mountain Range and enter the Path of Slaughter. In the end, they would die on the Path of Slaughter, and their bloodline power would dissipate on the Path of Slaughter and be absorbed by the Black Lotus King. All of this was a trap meticulously set up by the Black Lotus King. Bu Wu Qianxiu, for the sake of revenge and your own selfish desires, you killed so many innocent lives. How cruel! Nietian understood everything. He gloomily looked at Bu Wu Qianxiu and growled in a cold tone. Innocent? Bu Wu Qianxiu sneered when he heard Nietian's words as if he had heard a joke. He said, These people entered the domain of darkness to kill. Which one of their hands hasn't been stained with the blood of countless people? How laughable for you to say that these people are innocent. Nietian was stunned. His face stiffened and he couldn't speak for a while. Most of the martial practitioners who came to the domain of darkness were bloodthirsty and cruel people. These people were indeed not innocent. However, Wu Chinchio had killed so many people for the sake of revenge. Nietian would never approve of such a method. I know that you think of me as a homicidal maniac, but I don't care. The Black Lotus King stared at Nietian and said cold, "As long as I can take revenge, I am willing to do anything." "Do you really think you can take revenge?" Nie Tianling sneered and said with a mocking expression, "The current nine-god calamity can be said to be the strongest expert of the nine realms. Moreover, he has a saint artifact called the Glazed Demon Pagoda. With the help of the Glazed Demon Pagoda, the nine-god calamity has a high chance of breaking through to the saint realm. Will you still have a chance to take revenge when he reaches the saint realm? The nine-god calamity is the president of the sacred council, and you, Wu Chinchio, can only hide in the domain of darkness as a puny Black Lotus King, struggling at death's door." "Enough. Say no more." Wu Chinchio roared angrily. His aura surged, and his entire being turned into a vortex of slaughter. "You don't want to say it, so I will." Nie Tianling laughed. Not only did he not stop, he even raised his voice and said, "Wu Chinchio, no matter how much bloodline power you absorb, you are still no match for the nine-god calamity. You are destined to hide in the domain of darkness and never return to the nine realms." Chapter 1867. Enraged by Nie Tian's words, Wu Chinchio suddenly made his move. A monstrous aura filled the air as it pressed down on Nie Tian. Nie Tian felt a terrifying pressure surging towards him, making him feel like he was suffocating. "Young lord, be careful." At this moment, Yi Qinghai cried out in alarm. His silhouette flickered as he fiercely thrust out his palm. A majestic palm shadow appeared in the air and soared into the sky. Rumble! The two palms collided, resulting in a deafening explosion. The entire valley trembled as if it was on the verge of collapsing. Yi Qinghai's silhouette abruptly retreated, nearly losing his balance. His body trembled as he spurted out a mouthful of blood. It was obvious that his strength was far inferior to Wu Chinchio's. With just a single clash of palms, Wu Chinchio had injured Yi Qinghai. Elder Han, seeing that Yi Qinghai was injured, Nie Tian couldn't help but cry out with a nervous expression, "Young lord, I'm fine." Yi Qinghai growled as he stared at Wu Chinchio coldly. "I don't care if you're the Black Lotus King or Wu Chinchio. If you want to touch my young lord, you'll have to step over my dead body first." "Extreme Protector, you think you can stop me?" Wu Chinchio sneered. His eyes were filled with disdain. "Me too." At this time, Guiwu Quangsha took a step forward. Like a sharp sword, his sharp sword aura soared into the sky, majestic and majestic. "Good. Very good." Wu Chinchio sneered and roared. "Protector Extreme Een, Protector Extreme Yang, I'd like to see how capable you two are to dare to block my way." Wu Chinchio's arrogant voice faded. His cold eyes stared at Nie Tian and said, "Fiend God nascent embryo, you said that I'll never be Hua Jioshin's opponent. Let me tell you, as long as I absorb your fiend god bloodline, I'll be able to completely suppress the slaughter curse in my body. Moreover, I can borrow the fiend god's power to enter the 10th floor of the Path of Slaughter and obtain Lord Slaughter, Demon Venerable Slaughter inheritance. At that time, I'll be the first person in the nine realms to truly become a saint. Now that I've become a sage, will nine deities Hua still be a match for me?" A violent voice resounded in the void. Wu Chinchio laughed sinisterly. The reason why he let Nie Tian enter the Path of Slaughter was to obtain Nie Tian's fiend god bloodline. The slaughter curse mark was extremely terrifying. It could only be suppressed by constantly absorbing bloodline power. The god-devil bloodline was the strongest bloodline in the nine realms. It could completely suppress the slaughter curse mark. When Nie Tian first came to the realm of darkness, his whereabouts were exposed to Wu Chinchio. The reason for this was that the slaughter curse seal in the latter's body had a strong ability to sense the power of various bloodlines. Standing in front of Nie Tian, Wu Chinchio could feel the power of the latter's fiend god bloodline. He could even feel that the slaughter curse seal in his body had become restless. Nie Tian furrowed his brows. His eyes flickered as he looked at the entrance of the 10th floor. He wanted to enter the 10th floor, but he wasn't sure if Yi Qinghai and Guiwu Guangsha could stop Wu Qinqiu. Young master, hurry up and enter the 10th floor. Leave Wu Qinqiu to us. Yi Qinghai knew what Nie Tian was hesitating about. Do you think it's that easy to enter the 10th floor? Wu Qinqiu sneered. His figure flickered, and he slammed his palm down. Boundless killing intent spread out, and like a huge dark cloud, it pressed down on Nie Tian and the others. Puff! In an instant, Nie Tian felt a terrifying pressure. His body trembled, and he spurted out a mouthful of blood. But Wu Qinqiu's strength was too strong. Nie Tian couldn't even withstand the pressure of his aura. Yi Qinghai and Guiwu Guangsha glanced at each other. Both of them moved and attacked at the same time. Boom! Boom! In the void, a palm shadow and a sword shadow whistled out at the same time, blasting towards the sky. Rumble! In the next moment, a terrifying roar sounded, and an endless amount of power surged in the space. The mountains around the valley couldn't withstand this power, and they all collapsed like waves of earth rolling in all directions. Young master, don't hesitate anymore. Hurry up and enter the 10th floor. Yi Qinghai roared, reminding Nie Tian. Nie Tian's eyes narrowed. He knew that it was useless for him to stay here. He steeled his heart and stomped his feet. His silhouette moved like lightning, rushing towards the door of darkness in the air. Brat, it won't be that easy to enter the 10th floor. But Wu Qinqiu roared when he saw Nie Tian's action. His silhouette changed and turned into a black whirlpool, rushing towards Nie Tian. Nie Tian felt an intense slaughter chi. However, he didn't stop and rushed towards the door of darkness. Young master, be careful. Yi Qinghai's expression changed when he saw the black whirlpool rushing towards Nie Tian. He dashed forward and punched towards the black whirlpool. Guiwu Guangsha also frowned. Sword energy surged from his body, and he stabbed out with his sword. The sword shadow was like a dragon, majestic and powerful, rushing towards the black whirlpool. Guiwu Guangsha was already at the peak of paramount god level. Combined with his sword Dao cultivation base, his battle prowess was even stronger than an ordinary peak paramount god. Even Yi Qinghai wasn't a match for him. Damn it! But Wu Qinqiu felt two powerful forces rushing towards him. He roared, and the black whirlpool trembled. It turned into a black lotus that released slaughter chi. Bang! The black lotus instantly bloomed and expanded thousands of times. A terrifying slaughter chi filled the air. The whole valley seemed to have turned into hell. The pungent smell of blood filled the air. Black lotus true form. Nie Tian frowned. He immediately reacted. But Wu Qinqiu had transformed into his black lotus true form and released the slaughter chi of his true form. Boom! The violent slaughter chi was like a raging tsunami. The palm shadow and sword shadow were directly engulfed by it. Yi Qinghai and Guiwu Guangsha simultaneously felt the danger. Their expressions changed. They wanted to react, but it was already too late. Bang! Bang! Ear-piercing explosions rang out, as two muffled sounds rang out. Yi Qinghai and Guiwu Guangsha's figures were sent flying back. The frightening slaughter chi rushed high up into the sky, leaving behind two blood-red streaks in the air. Nie Tian's expression changed when he saw this scene. But Wu Qinqiu's strength was simply too strong. The power of his black lotus true form had directly sent Yi Qinghai and Guiwu Guangsha flying. Nie Tian was extremely worried about the safety of Yi Qinghai and Guiwu Guangsha. But at this moment, he had no time to think about anything else. He could only enter the 10th level. With this thought in mind, forbidden runes covered Nie Tian's body. His aura skyrocketed. At the same time, a pair of astral soul wings appeared on his back. He forcibly broke through the pressure of the black lotus true form and shot into the darkness. Just as Nie Tian's silhouette disappeared, the door of darkness trembled and started to close. Chapter 1868. Nie Tian and Wu Qinqiu entered the door of darkness one after the other. When Yi Qinghai, who was high up in the sky, saw this scene, his face darkened, and he exclaimed, young master. He was heavily injured by Bu Wu Qianqiu's Black Lotus body. Although he did not die, his injuries were extremely severe. In his agitated state, he spat out a mouthful of blood. Brother Yi, Gue Wu Kuangsha's figure appeared, stepping forward to support Yi Qinghai, his gaze looking towards the already closed door of darkness. Gue Wu Kuangsha's injuries were slightly lighter. However, at this moment, his condition was extremely bad, with numerous bone-deep wounds present on his body, while his face was deathly pale like paper. The Black Lotus body of Takashi Martial Thousand Autumns was truly terrifying, as it had almost insta-killed Yi Qinghai and Ghost Martial Berserk Sand. Yi Qinghai thought even he and Gue Wu Kuangsha were far from being Bu Wu Qianqiu's opponent. If Nie Tian and Bu Wu Qianqiu entered the 10th floor together, wouldn't it bode ill rather than well? Thinking of this, his expression became even more pained. Brother Yi, don't worry too much. I believe that nothing will happen to Nie Tian. Gue Wu Kuangsha knew what Yi Qinghai was thinking about. His eyes sparkled as he said in a heavy tone, Nie Tian's talent can be said to be the limit of a martial artist. I believe that a martial artist like him must be a world-shaking existence. Nothing will happen to him. Yi Qinghai's eyes were gloomy. He knew that it was useless to worry, so he could only say, I hope so. Yi Qinghai really didn't know how he would face Nie Fenghua in the future if something happened to Nie Tian. At the same time, on the 10th floor of the Path of Massacre, Nie Tian's figure was like a bolt of lightning. The moment he entered the 10th floor, he felt the space around him change instantly. The space-time aura actually became extremely heavy. In such a heavy space-time environment, his speed instantly slowed down, as if he had sunk into an extremely deep pool. The pressure from the space-time actually made him feel slightly pressured. Nie Tian steadied himself and glanced around. His expression couldn't help but grow strange. He came to an unknown world. It seemed like there was only space here, and there was nothing around him. Nie Tian was puzzled, but he could feel that there was an extremely strong slaughter chi in the surroundings. This kind of slaughter chi was even more terrifying than Bu Wu Qianqiu's. What kind of place is this 10th floor? Nie Tian was puzzled. Just as he was about to speak to the fat cat, he suddenly noticed that there were balls of white light appearing in the surrounding space. Nie Tian's expression changed as he stared at the white light in the air with a look of astonishment. This white light released a very strong, killing intent, but at the same time, it made Nie Tian feel a faint holy aura. The slaughter chi actually contained a pure and holy aura. This was too strange. Nie Tian's expression changed rapidly. Soon after, he discovered that the white light in the space was becoming more and more intense and dazzling. This is... Nie Tian frowned. All of a sudden, he felt a great pressure from the surrounding space. He lowered his head and saw countless white bones on the ground. The endless white bones were densely spread on the ground, like an ocean. At a glance, it was vast and boundless. Nie Tian was shocked. He could feel an extremely strong slaughter chi from the endless white bones. At the same time, the white bones were also releasing a strong pressure, giving him a huge pressure that was difficult to bear. Boom! At this moment, Nie Tian suddenly felt a vast and boundless pressure suddenly coming from above his head. He suddenly raised his head, and his expression directly froze. What appeared in the air were also endless white bones. Countless white skulls piled up together, occupying the entire sky. The whole world was filled with a white death chi. Nie Tian felt the death chi surrounding his body. It was not fear that surged in his heart, but a kind of reverence. It was reverence for life and death. This feeling was very mysterious, and it caused a strange change in Nie Tian's state of mind. Nie Tian was stunned on the spot for a long time. At a certain moment, he suddenly thought of something. His expression changed, and then he exclaimed, "Sage bones!" Almost in an instant, Nie Tian suddenly understood that the endless white bones surrounding his body were the sage bones. No wonder these white bones not only exuded slaughter chi, but also contained a holy chi and a strong pressure. Nietion looked around, his eyes trembling. It was hard to imagine, where did so many sage bones come from? Furthermore, Nietion had heard that the bones of most saints were golden. Only the bones of extremely powerful saints would turn as pure and holy as white jade after their deaths. In the eyes of God-state warriors, sages were simply immortal and indestructible. Then, where did these sage bones that were piled up like mountains and seas in front of him come from? Nietion pondered deeply, and his expression couldn't help but change again and again. The world in front of him was beyond his imagination, and he couldn't understand it all. After a while, Nietion calmed down a little. His figure sank a little, and he wanted to pick up a piece of sage bone. However, at this moment, he suddenly felt a light in front of him. A white halo descended from the sky, like a huge ripple, surging in the sky, instantly filling the entire world. Nietion suddenly looked up and saw that among the piles of white bones in the sky, there was actually a holy figure in white. Nietion's eyes suddenly narrowed, and his expression froze. At this moment, the figure in white stepped on the endless white bones, and his figure slowly descended, coming towards Nietion. Nietion looked at the old man in white, and his eyes were filled with horror. He could feel that this old man didn't exist physically, but with a phantom. At this moment, Nietion already had a bold guess in his heart, but he didn't dare to confirm it. Previously, Fat Cat told him that the creator of the Path of Massacre, the massacred demon Venerable, left behind a divine soul in the 10th level. As long as one could obtain the recognition of the massacred demon Venerable's divine soul, one could become the owner of the Path of Massacre. Hence, Nietion guessed that this old man in white in front of him was the massacred demon Venerable. But this old man in white in front of him was completely different from what he had expected previously. The massacred demon Venerable, Nietion originally thought that it would be a peerless powerhouse with a heavy killing aura and overflowing domineeringness. But the person in front of him didn't have any killing aura at all. Instead, he was very holy, and the corners of his mouth even carried a faint smile, with a sage-like demeanor, giving people an amiable feeling, just like the old grandpa next door. Just as Nietion was guessing and pondering, the old man in white already arrived beside him, less than 10 meters away from him. At such a close distance, Nietion sensed a sacred and solemn aura, as well as a boundless pressure that shook him to the core. The old man in white smiled faintly, and his eyes kept sizing up Nietion. The corner of his mouth curved up from time to time, but he didn't say anything. You are. After a long time, Nietion couldn't help but pluck up his courage and try to speak. Chapter 1869. The white-robed old man suddenly opened his mouth, causing Nietion to be taken aback. The demon origin embryo, the starry raw stone, a powerful forbidden rune, and the origin energy of the earth element has been integrated into your body. Young man, you're really something. At this moment, the white-robed old man spoke again. His gentle gaze swept over Nietion as he smiled faintly. Nietion's eyes froze. The elder was able to see through his trump card with one look. This surprised him a lot. However, on second thought, the elder was the venerable slaughtering demon soul, a real sage-level cultivator. It wasn't strange for him to have this kind of perceptive ability. Sir, are you the venerable slaughtering demon? Nietion became cold and asked. The elder was surprised when he heard Nietion's words. He then smiled and said, You know I's name? Nietion's guess was correct. The white-robed old man in front of him was none other than the slaughter demon's wisp of soul that had been left in the path of slaughter. The venerable slaughtering demon didn't expect Nietion to know about him. Even though the venerable slaughtering demon could sense Nietion's demon origin embryo, he couldn't sense the inner world of the demon origin embryo. Therefore, he didn't know about the fat cat. Young man, what's your name? The venerable slaughtering demon smiled and asked. Nietion. Nietion responded with a smile as well. Not a bad name. The venerable slaughtering demon smiled again and asked, I want to ask you, do you know what the Path of Massacre is? I know a little. Nietion nodded slightly and told him everything he knew. The venerable, slaughtering demon frowned. He was surprised that Nyetian knew so many things. However, the venerable monster didn't ask too many questions. Instead, it said, Nyetian, since you've come to the 10th floor, it's fate between us. If you're willing, you can become the master of the path of slaughter. At the same time, you can also obtain the slaughter inheritance left behind by massacre inheritance. Nyetian's expression changed slightly when he heard that. He was not surprised, but nervous. To most martial artists, the power of inheritance was something that was extremely tempting. However, Nyetian wasn't too interested in the power of inheritance. The so-called inheritance was the power left behind by other experts. If a martial artist were to fuse with the power of inheritance, their strength would increase greatly in a short period of time. Moreover, their cultivation speed would also be very fast in the future. Their future achievements would not be low either. However, fusing with the power of inheritance had a flaw, and that was that it would limit the martial artist's own potential. No matter how compatible the power of inheritance was with the martial artist's own strength, it wasn't his own strength after all. It was imposed from outside. Therefore, any power of inheritance would have a certain impact on the martial artist's own strength. In this way, the martial artist's own talent would be weakened, and his future path of martial arts would be limited. Because of this, Nyetian didn't like the power of inheritance. In fact, he was very repulsed by it. When he had obtained the 3-life stone, Tian had left tens of thousands of inheritances of divine swordsmen. This was the reason why Nyetian didn't want any of them. However, when Snow had fused with the legacy of the 10,000 swords, she had done so in a very rare way. She had directly fused the power of the legacy into her bloodline. Not only had this not affected Snow's potential, it had even boosted her growth significantly. The reason why Cher could fuse the power of inheritance into her bloodline was that her bloodline power hadn't been formed yet. However, the current Nyetian already had a powerful bloodline power in his body. If he accepted the slaughter inheritance, it would definitely have a great impact on his talent. Nyetian, your calmness is beyond I's expectations. The slaughtering venerable demon caught Nyetian's reaction. He smiled faintly and said, I know what you're worried about, and it's very necessary. The slaughter inheritance will indeed affect your talent, and it might even hinder your future achievements in martial arts. However, the slaughtering venerable demon changed the topic and said, you have to think about it carefully. The slaughter inheritance that I left behind is a sage-level inheritance. As long as you fuse with the slaughter inheritance, not only will you instantly improve your strength, but your future cultivation speed will also be very fast. It's even possible for you to reach the Saint Realm within 100 years. Moreover, after fusing with the slaughter inheritance, you will definitely be able to reach the Saint Realm. Can you resist such a temptation? With these words, the slaughter monarch looked at Nyetian with a meaningful look on his face, a weird smile at the corner of his mouth. The temptation of a sage-level inheritance was indeed very great. Anyone in the 9 domains would choose to nod their head when faced with such a temptation. Moreover, the slaughtering venerable demon had already guaranteed that as long as he fused with the slaughter inheritance, he would definitely reach the Saint Realm. It should be known that no one in the 9 domains had reached the Saint Realm in the past 1,000,000 years. The Saint Realm. Just these 2 words alone were an irresistible temptation to all the martial artists. However, Nyetian was hesitating at the moment. He believed that with his talent, even if he didn't fuse with the slaughter inheritance, he would definitely be able to reach the Saint Realm in the future. He had this confidence in himself. Moreover, fusing with other people's power was not the path of martial arts that he wanted. Seeing that Nyetian became cold, the slaughtering venerable demon's eyes couldn't help but flicker. He had never thought that a warrior with only the strength of a high god could be so calm in the face of a sage-level inheritance. In fact, with Nyetian's talent, even if he fused with the slaughter inheritance, it wouldn't affect his talent much because he had the raw star stone in his body, which could perfectly fuse with all kinds of power. However, Nyetian wanted to walk his own path of martial arts. He wanted to reach the peak of martial arts with his own strength. After thinking for a while, Nietian calmed down. He looked at the slaughtering venerable demon and said, "Venerable demon, I really want to be the master of the path of slaughter, but I'll pass on the slaughter inheritance." Huh? The slaughtering venerable demon's eyes suddenly narrowed. His expression was obviously stiff, and then he asked, "Nietian, do you really refuse the slaughter inheritance?" Although the slaughtering venerable demon could tell that Nietian didn't like the power of inheritance, he was still shocked when he heard Nietian refuse. After all, this was a sage-level inheritance, and Nietian actually refused it. This kind of willpower was not something that ordinary warriors could have. The slaughtering venerable demon estimated that even the peak of the supreme God Realm warriors would absolutely go crazy in the face of a sage-level inheritance. However, the strength of Nietian's willpower was far beyond the slaughtering venerable demon's expectation, and it almost shocked him. "I refuse." Nietian smiled faintly, and his face was very calm. At this time, the slaughtering venerable demon's expression slowly changed, and he said in a somewhat gloomy tone, "Nietian, if you refuse the slaughter inheritance, then you won't be recognized by I, and you can't become the master of the path of slaughter." Chapter 1870. Nietian's expression changed when he sensed the murderous aura from the slaughtered demon venerable. The slaughtered demon venerable was a Saint Realm expert. Even if it was only a soul, it wasn't something Nietian could contend against. However, Nietian maintained his composure, calmly looking at the slaughtered demon venerable, speaking in an indifferent tone. "I have no interest in the slaughter inheritance. Even if you force me, my choice is still to refuse." "Refuse?" The slaughtered demon venerable revealed a strange smile. "If you refuse, then you cannot become the owner of the path of slaughter. You must think this through. The path of slaughter is a saint tool." "So what if it's a saint tool?" "I don't care." Nietian was very stubborn, speaking in a cold manner. "Good brat, you have guts." The slaughter demon venerable suddenly smiled and turned around. "Since you don't care about the path of slaughter and the inheritance, you can leave now." Nietian was slightly taken aback. He didn't expect the slaughter demon venerable to let him go so easily. He pondered for a moment, then slightly bowed and turned around, preparing to leave. "Nietian, we're currently in the Myriad Saints' forgotten tomb. Once we get out of here, there'll be a very annoying fellow waiting for you outside. Are you a match for him?" At this time, the slaughter demon monarch's voice rang out again with a hint of mockery. Immediately, the slaughtered demon venerable waved its hand, and a halo appeared. Nietian looked over and saw the scene inside the halo. A figure was standing there in a frenzy. Marshal Chinchio? Marshal Chinchio. He also entered the 10th floor. Nietian was taken aback. He didn't expect Marshal Chinchio to also come here. But then, a trace of a smile appeared on his face. Because Marshal Chinchio's appearance here meant that Yi Qinghai and Guiwu Quangsha were safe outside. "Did you see that?" The slaughter demon venerable smiled. "Black Lotus King is also on the 10th floor. As long as I allows him to enter the Myriad Saints' forgotten tomb, he will not hesitate to merge with the slaughter inheritance." Nietian's expression immediately became gloomy. Bu Wu Qianqiu's appearance here made the situation a lot more complicated. Needless to say, the situation Nietian was facing now was ridiculous. The slaughtering venerable demon was forcing him to integrate the slaughtering inheritance. "Do I have to integrate the slaughter inheritance?" Nietian thought to himself as his expression kept changing. He really didn't want to integrate the slaughter inheritance. This wasn't the path of martial arts that he wanted. "Nietian, you must not merge with the slaughter inheritance." At this time, Fat Cat's voice suddenly sounded and said in a deep voice, "Hmm?" Before the Fat Cat's voice faded away, the slaughter venerable monster suddenly cried out in surprise. Then his expression changed and he laughed, saying, "Nietian, no wonder you know so much about the path of slaughter. It turns out that you have a 9-tailed chinchilla hidden by your side." "Sigh, we were still discovered." The Fat Cat sighed, Then his figure moved and appeared on Niet Tion's shoulder, looking at the slaughtering venerable monster helplessly. The fat cat didn't speak just now, because he was afraid of being discovered by the slaughtering venerable monster. Sure enough, the slaughtering venerable monster immediately noticed as soon as he spoke. The reason why the fat cat spoke was because Niet Tion couldn't integrate the slaughter inheritance. The slaughtering venerable monster looked at the fat cat with a surprised expression and said, "Nine-tailed chinchilla, I remember that you are the glazed demon pagoda spirit, right? How come you are with this little guy?" The fat cat glanced at Niet Tion and then told him how he escaped from the glazed demon pagoda. So that's how it is. The slaughtering venerable monster couldn't help but smile and said, "The glazed demon pagoda has become someone else's possession. It seems that the glazed demon old monster is also dead. Lord Glazed Demon Old Monster is probably dead," the fat cat said with a helpless expression. Of course, he knew that the glazed demon old monster was the creator of the glazed demon pagoda, Glazed Demon Old Monster. The glazed demon old monster and the slaughtering demon old monster knew each other, so the fat cat knew a lot about the path of slaughter. However, the fat cat really didn't know what happened to the glazed demon old monster and the slaughtering demon old monster. "Lord Demon Old Monster, why do you want Niet Tion to integrate the slaughter inheritance?" At this moment, the fat cat calmed down and asked. The slaughtering demon old monster's expression couldn't help but become solemn, as if he remembered something. After a long time, he said, "I's body is already dead, leaving only this last divine soul, and it won't exist for long. If no one inherits the slaughter inheritance, then my slaughter clan will be completely annihilated." "What?" the fat cat screamed and said with surprise. "Lord Slaughtering Demon Old Monster is also dead." The slaughtering demon old monster nodded and said, "I don't know what happened to I's body. I don't know either. But the meaning of I's existence is to find an inheritor for the slaughter inheritance. Although Niet Tion isn't the most suitable person for the slaughter inheritance, he has a strong mind and should be able to control the slaughter inheritance well." Hearing the slaughtering demon old monster's words, Niet Tion couldn't help but be speechless. After all, he wasn't suitable for the slaughter inheritance at all. It was just that the slaughtering demon old monster wouldn't exist for long, so they made do with him to complete the task. Niet Tion has the raw star stone in his body, so he really isn't suitable for the slaughter inheritance. The fat cat looked at Niet Tion, then looked at the slaughtering demon old monster and said, "Lord Demon Old Monster, if you really want to find an inheritor, isn't there a ready-made one outside? This guy only cares about revenge and has a strong desire to kill. He's very suitable for the slaughter inheritance." The person Fat Cat was talking about was, of course, Bu Wu Qianxiu. The slaughtering demon old monster laughed and shook its head. "Do you really think that the true meaning of the slaughter inheritance is really to kill?" Niet Tion and the Fat Cat were stunned at the same time. The slaughter inheritance was obviously about slaughter. Could it be that there was a higher truth? The slaughtering demon old monster laughed again and said, "I's body achieved the slaughter Tao. The true meaning of the slaughter Tao wasn't about killing, but about stopping killing with killing. Stopping killing with killing." Niet Tion and the Fat Cat were stunned again. It seemed that they had misunderstood the slaughter inheritance. The slaughtering venerable demon smiled and continued, "The slaughtering inheritance indeed contains the strongest slaughtering chi. However, in order to control the slaughtering inheritance, one must be a kind and compassionate person. Only such a person can comprehend the true meaning of killing to stop killing." At this point, the massacring demon venerable glanced outside and said, "Marshal Qianxiu is bloodthirsty and cruel. For the sake of his personal enmity, he set up a path of slaughter and killed countless cultivators. His ruthlessness is evident. If the slaughter inheritance falls into his hands, it will be the biggest blasphemy to the slaughter inheritance." Niet Tion and the Fat Cat looked at each other and couldn't help but be silent. The true meaning of killing with killing from the slaughter inheritance was indeed out of their expectations. If Bu Wu Qianxiu obtained the slaughter inheritance, it was estimated that the entire 9 territories would welcome an earth-shaking bloodbath. Lord Demon Old Monster, your consideration is very correct. However, Nietion really can't fuse with the slaughter inheritance. After a moment of silence, the fat cat frowned and said with a troubled expression, "Why?" The slaughtering demon Old Monster was stunned and asked. Chapter 1871. Extreme Demonic Force. Upon hearing Little Fat Cat's words, Nietion couldn't help but be taken aback, a look of confusion on his face. He didn't know that his bloodline contained such a power. The Slaughter Monarch's face also stiffened as he fixed Nietion with a strange expression. Fat Cat glanced at Nietion and said, "Cher told you that there's an evil force in your blood. This evil force is the extreme demonic force." Nietion couldn't help but narrow his eyes as he asked in astonishment, "Is this kind of power very terrifying?" "Yes." Fat Cat nodded and said, "When you condensed the demonic aura, you briefly awakened the extreme demonic force. Back then, you went berserk and almost hurt Shue. If it wasn't for Cher's blood, you would have become a demon." This, Nietion's face froze, and he was at a loss for words. He still remembered when he condensed the demonic aura. At that time, he did lose control for a short time. Luckily, Cher was there, and he drank some of Cher's blood to recover. At that time, Nietion felt the evil force in his blood, but he didn't know that it was called the extreme demonic force. "Fat, why can't I feel the existence of the extreme demonic force?" Nietion became cold and asked. "Because of balance." Fat Cat knew what Nietion was thinking and explained, "The extreme demonic force comes from the demon origin embryo. The demon origin embryo is formed by the fusion of the God-forbidden embryo and the extreme demonic embryo. Therefore, the origin embryo can produce two kinds of power. One is the demon-forbidden dark force, and the other is the extreme demonic force. The two kinds of power are hidden in the demon origin embryo and suppress each other, so you won't feel anything under normal circumstances. But if you merge the slaughter inheritance, the extreme demonic force in your body will be stimulated by the slaughter chi and be awakened. At that time, you will become a demon." Nietion frowned and could not help but suck in a breath of cold air. No wonder he was hesitating on whether or not to merge with the slaughter inheritance, which scared the fat cat so much that she hurriedly stopped him. What Nietion was facing now wasn't a question of whether or not he wanted or was suitable for the slaughter inheritance, but whether or not he could integrate the slaughter inheritance. At this time, the slaughter venerable demon sensed the existence of the extreme devil force in Nietion's body. He knew that the fat cat didn't lie to him. He couldn't help but sigh and said sadly, "Is my slaughter clan really going to be destroyed?" The slaughter venerable demon knew that if it forced Nietion to fuse with the slaughter inheritance, it would only make Nietion become a demon and eventually create a slaughter demon. This was not the result he wanted. What he was looking for was a person who could truly comprehend the true meaning of stopping killing with killing. As for Bu Wu Chinshio outside the tomb of myriad saints, the slaughter venerable demon didn't even consider him. Even if the slaughter clan was destroyed, he would not let the slaughter inheritance fall into the hands of someone like Bu Wu Chinshio. "Sir Demon Venerable, since Nietion is not suitable for the slaughter inheritance, why don't you find someone else?" At this time, the fat cat suddenly revealed a strange smile, her eyes flashing with a strange light. "Absolutely not." The slaughter venerable demon's eyes flickered, looking outside the tomb of myriad saints. He subconsciously thought that the someone else fat cat mentioned was Bu Wu Chinshio. He would never agree to let Bu Wu Chinshio become the inheritor of the slaughter inheritance. "Sir Demon Venerable, don't be so agitated. This venerable is talking about someone else, not Bu Wu Chinshio outside." The fat cat smirked, her eyes looking at Nietion. The slaughter venerable was taken aback for a moment, then laughed. "Little chinchilla, don't tell me you want to merge with the slaughter inheritance? Forgive I, but your chinchilla body can't withstand the slaughter inheritance, so don't think too much about it. Lord Demon Venerable, I know what I'm capable of. This venerable is not stupid enough to merge with the slaughter inheritance. This venerable has another meaning when I said someone else. The fat cat smirked with a smug expression. Hmm? The slaughter venerable frowned, asking in surprise, "There are others here? On the 10th floor, other than Yetian, Bu Wu Chinchio, and the fat cat?" The slaughter venerable didn't see anyone else, so he felt strange. But in the next second, the slaughter venerable reacted, exclaiming, "There are others on Yetian." Since the fat cat could survive in the origin embryo space, then others could as well. Nope. The fat cat smirked, then looked at Nyetian and said, "Nyetian, ask the superbs to come out." Nyetian smiled, nodded, and the 9 superbs appeared in his hand. In fact, he had just heard that the fat cat wanted the slaughter venerable to find someone from the 9 superbs to merge with the slaughter inheritance. Just now, Nyetian was thinking about who was more suitable for the slaughter inheritance among the 9 superbs. There were many people in the 9 superbs: Sakura, Jing Chun, Rui Qinyu, Jian Jingyun, Gue Wushan, Long Outyin, Lu Motu, Qin Fun, and Jean Tuesday. Nyetian felt that Jian Jingyun and Gue Wushan were both swordsmen, so their sword essence was not suitable for the slaughter inheritance. Long Outyin and Lu Motu were not suitable either. He didn't know Qin Fun well, so he didn't consider him. As for Jing Chun, he was too old. Even if he merged with the slaughter inheritance, his future achievements would not be too high. Among the remaining people, only Sakura and Rui Qinyu were left. Although Sakura was an old monster who had lived for nearly 1,000,000 years, his martial body was very young. Moreover, he had already reached the legendary realm of sword and martial unification, so he could change the attribute of his sword essence at will. Therefore, it was a good choice for him to merge with the slaughter inheritance. Rui Qinyu also had the ability to merge with the slaughter inheritance. Because she had the 9-color pupils, her body contained the power of 9 attributes. In terms of attributes, she could merge with the inheritance of any attribute. Sakura and Rui Qinyu were the 2 most suitable for the slaughter inheritance. As for what the slaughter venerable would choose, it was up to him. Nyetian moved his mind. The 9 superbs released a space-time aura, and everyone came out. The slaughter venerable looked at the people who suddenly appeared in front of him, and his face stiffened. Then he looked at the 9 superbs in Nyetian's hand and said in shock, "You comprehended the universe line and the universe line." "Yes." Nyetian nodded slightly and smiled faintly. The slaughter venerable's expression stiffened again. He didn't expect that Nyetian could comprehend the universe line and the universe line at such a young age. He had long sensed that Nyetian had the first devil fire, the universe boundary, and the second devil fire, the heart of nothingness. However, he didn't expect that Nyetian had already comprehended the universe line and the universe line. "Lord Demon Venerable, do you know how long it took Nyetian to comprehend the universe line?" Fat Cat looked at the slaughter venerable and asked proudly. "How long?" The slaughter venerable's eyes flickered, and he asked with great interest. The fat cat didn't say anything. Instead, he raised a paw. "1 year." The slaughter venerable guessed. The fat cat shook his head. "1 month?" The slaughter venerable's expression changed slightly, and he guessed again. The fat cat shook his head again. His blue eyes flickered, and he said, "1 day." Chapter 1872. In the tomb of myriad saints, slaughtering venerable monster was dumbfounded. It took a long time for him to react, his eyes sizing up Nyetian with a strange and shocked expression. Cosmic lines were related to the essence of the universe and the true meaning of space-time. Many sage-level powerhouses needed several months or even years to comprehend cosmic lines. Nyetian only needed 1 day to comprehend cosmic lines. This comprehension ability was so monstrous that it made people's hair stand on end. Nyetian couldn't help but laugh at slaughtering venerable's reaction. Only now did he realize that it was so difficult to comprehend cosmic lines. Slaughtering venerable monster calmed down after a long time. His gaze swept across the crowd. Then he explained the matter of the slaughter inheritance. After listening to slaughtering venerable monster's introduction, everyone's expression changed instantly. Almost everyone had a fervent look in their eyes. Who wouldn't want to obtain a saint-level inheritance power? Nietion specially observed Sakura and Rui Chinyu's reactions, but the two's reactions were completely different. Sakura's was more passionate than anyone else's, while Rui Chinyu's reaction was relatively calm, even a little cold, as if she had no interest in the slaughter inheritance. Nietion could understand Sakura's desire. After all, the former failed to break through to the sage realm in his previous life and became a remnant soul for hundreds of thousands of years. These hundreds of thousands of years might seem simple to others, but Sakura himself had endured hundreds of thousands of years of loneliness. This kind of feeling was absolutely incomprehensible unless he experienced it himself. Sakura reconstructed his body and obtained a new life, but he still followed Fat Cat and Nietion in order to one day use Fat Cat's power to advance to the sage realm. At this time, a sage-level inheritance was placed in front of Sakura. How could he not be excited? Rui Chinyu's calmness was beyond Nietion's expectations. Ever since Nietion reunited with Rui Chinyu in Senluo Ghost Domain, the latter's mentality had completely changed, as if she was a different person. In the past, Rui Chinyu looked cold on the outside, but deep down, she had a strong desire for revenge. But now, she no longer looked cold on the surface, and her heart was very calm. She didn't fight for anything. This kind of mentality was really rare. The slaughtering venerable demon's gaze swept across everyone. Very quickly, his attention stopped on Sakura and Raindrop Thousand Leaves. Just as Nietion predicted, Slaughter Venerable Demon also felt that among all the people present, only Sakura and Rui Chinyu were suitable for the slaughter inheritance. However, it was hard to say who the slaughtering venerable monster would choose in the end. Slaughter Venerable Monster pointed at Sakura and Rui Chinyu and said faintly, "You two stay, the others can go back." Jian Jingyun and the others had a look of regret on their faces. They knew in their hearts that they were not chosen by the slaughtering demon venerable. Nietion let the others return to the Nine Superbs, leaving only Sakura and Rui Chinyu. Venerable demon, both Sakura and Rui Chinyu are very suitable for the slaughter inheritance. Who do you want to choose? Fat Cat's figure moved, jumped on Sakura's shoulder, and asked with a smirk. In fact, Fat Cat was partial to Sakura, because once Sakura obtained the slaughter inheritance, his strength would inevitably improve again, which was also a very good thing for Nietion. Nietion didn't care. Although the slaughter inheritance was powerful, it also had its advantages and disadvantages. Nietion would be very happy if Sakura or Rui Chinyu obtained the slaughter inheritance. Slaughter Venerable Demon smiled faintly and didn't answer. Instead, he looked at Sakura and said, "Release your sword intent and let I have a look." "Yes." Sakura nodded heavily. Sword intent gushed out from his body and condensed into a terrible sword shadow around him. It was extremely sharp and cold, exuding an extremely strong slaughter chi. Slaughter Venerable Demon nodded slightly and didn't say anything. He then looked at Rui Chinyu and said, "Little girl, try to open your 9-color pupils." Rui Chinyu nodded slightly, and then closed her 9-color pupils. She then said, "Venerable Demon, I'm not suitable for the slaughter inheritance. You should choose Sakura." "Why?" Slaughter Venerable Demon was stunned for a moment and then smiled bitterly. This was the second time he was rejected today. It was ridiculous that he couldn't even give away the power of the sage-level inheritance. Rui Chinyu smiled faintly and looked at Nietion with gentle eyes. She said, "I don't want any power. As long as I can stay by Nietion's side, I'll be satisfied." Her faint voice was calm and gentle, but it sounded like thunder in Nietion's ears. It made him feel like there was a roar in his head and a warm current flowed through his body. If it was before, he would never have imagined that Rui Chinyu would say something like this. Rui Chinyu had indeed changed. Her mind was calm and peaceful. "Venerable Demon, since the little girl doesn't want to merge with the slaughter inheritance, then let Sakura do it." Fat Cat smiled and said with a fiery look in her eyes. Sakura's gem-like big eyes were shining with a bright light. He was very excited. "No." However, unexpectedly, Slaughter Venerable Demon smiled faintly and said, I will choose this little girl with 9-color pupils. What? Everyone was stunned. They thought they had heard it wrong and looked at Slaughter, venerable demon, with astonishment. Sakura and Rui Chinyu were both very suitable for the Slaughter inheritance. The former longed for it, and the latter refused it directly. But who would have thought that Slaughter, venerable demon, would choose Rui Chinyu? Why? Suddenly, Sakura roared angrily. His whole body surged with sword momentum and released a strong, murderous intent. Tian and Fat Cat couldn't help but become nervous. The atmosphere also became strange. Sakura was too eager for the Slaughter inheritance. He really wanted to advance to the Sage Realm. Because of this, Slaughter, venerable demon's reaction was very calm. She smiled faintly and pointed at Sakura and said, "Your heart is not calm. The desire to kill in your sword is too strong. You can't control the Slaughter inheritance with your current state of mind." "What do you mean?" Sakura frowned and asked in a cold tone. Slaughter, venerable demon, smiled and said, "The Slaughter chi in the Slaughter inheritance is very heavy. Warriors with a weak mind can easily be controlled by the Slaughter chi and become a bloodthirsty devil." With that said, Slaughter, venerable demon, looked at Sakura with a burning gaze and said, "Perhaps you can barely control the Slaughter inheritance now, but if you encounter some big changes, your divine sense may be controlled by the Slaughter chi. I didn't let you integrate the Slaughter inheritance. This is for your own good. Think about what you have done in order to advance to the Sage Realm." Sakura's eyes narrowed. He was speechless for a moment. In order to advance to the Sage Realm, he killed tens of thousands of swordsmen and created the Soul Tomb of Wan Jian. At that time, he wanted to advance to the Sage Realm. For this goal, he didn't hesitate to do anything. But in the end, he still failed. After meeting Tian, Sakura's mentality slowly changed. Recalling all this, Sakura felt a strong sense of guilt in his heart. "Thank you, venerable demon." After a long time, Sakura retracted his sword intent and bowed deeply to thank Slaughter, venerable demon. Tian saw this scene and breathed a sigh of relief. It seemed that Sakura had thought it through. Chapter 1873. The Slaughter demon venerable chose Rui Chinyu, so Tian let Sakura return to the 9 extremes. Although Rui Chinyu had little interest in the Slaughter inheritance, she naturally wouldn't refuse to merge with it. "Sir Demon Venerable, how are you going to help Chinyu merge with the Slaughter inheritance?" Tian took a step forward and asked in high spirits. The Slaughter Demon Venerable faintly smiled. "The Slaughter inheritance is a saint-level inheritance. Merging it is not something that can be done in a day." Tian was surprised and asked, "Will it take a long time to merge the Slaughter inheritance?" The Slaughter Demon Venerable nodded and said, "It will take at least a few months. I will only help her with the initial integration. If she wants to fully obtain the power of the Slaughter inheritance, it will depend on her future martial arts achievements." Tian frowned. He didn't expect the merging of the Slaughter inheritance to take a few months. "Do we have to stay here for a few months?" Tian looked at the Slaughter Demon Venerable and asked. He didn't have much time, so a few months was very precious to him. "No need." The Slaughter Demon Venerable smiled. "I can enter the 9 extremes and help her merge with the Slaughter inheritance." "That's good." Tian nodded with a smile. He didn't have a few months to waste. "However, we have a troublesome matter to eliminate right now." The Slaughter Demon Venerable laughed at this time. "Once the merging of the inheritance begins, the space-time barrier of the Myriad Saints' Forgotten Tomb will become weaker and weaker, allowing that guy outside to rush in." "Bu Wu Qinxiu." Tian's eyes narrowed and his expression changed. The Slaughter Demon Venerable was worried about Bu Wu Qinxiu. "Yes." The Slaughter Demon Venerable solemnly nodded. "If Bu Wu Qinxiu rushes in during the merging of the inheritance, then it will be troublesome." "Sir Demon Venerable, you mean to kill Bu Wu Qinxiu?" Tian looked at the Slaughter Demon Venerable with a puzzled expression and probed. "Yes." The Slaughter Demon Venerable nodded and revealed a strange smile. Tian's expression darkened. "Bu Wu Qinxiu is a peak paramount god. Who among us is a match for him?" "You." The slaughter demon, Venerable, stared at Nietion with a faint smile. Nietion's face stiffened, and he smiled bitterly. Sir Demon Venerable, please don't joke with me. I'm only a paramount god. I'm not a match for Buwu Chinchio. Nietion wasn't afraid of any of his enemies, but he had a clear understanding of his own strength. He had to admit that he wouldn't be able to withstand a single blow from Martial Millennium. Previously, Buwu Chinchio had used his true form of the Black Lotus to severely injure Yi Qing and the sea ghost Martial Guangsha. Even in the entire 9 realms, there were only a few people with such battle prowess. The Tian was that Nietion was Tian Wu Tian, had was Tian, had Wu Tian. The Tian was Nietion Tian was Venerable One, Tian's Tian. I wasn't joking with you, Nietion, the Slaughter Demon Venerable said solemnly. The Slaughter Demon Venerable's expression was very serious as he said, if there is one person here who can kill Buwu Chinchio, it's you. Why? Nietion frowned when he saw the serious expression on the Slaughter Demon Venerable's face. Nietion, do you know why Buwu Chinchio rarely enters the path of slaughter? The Slaughter Demon Venerable didn't answer Nietion's question. I don't know. Nietion shook his head. Yi Qinghai had indeed said that although Buwu Chinchio was the owner of the path of slaughter, he rarely entered it. In order to kill Nietion, Buwu Chinchio had sent the 12 Lotus Lords, but the betrayal of the Yin-Yang Dharma protectors had forced him to enter the path of slaughter himself. Because Buwu Chinchio has a curse mark of slaughter in him, the Slaughter Demon Venerable spoke in a heavy tone. The path of slaughter's slaughter energy is very intense. When Buwu Chinchio enters it, the curse mark in his body will always be active, causing him to be under great pressure. Nietion nodded. So that was the reason. No wonder Buwu Chinchio didn't want to enter the path of slaughter himself. At this time, Nietion suddenly understood something and asked, Lord Demon Venerable, you can stimulate the curse mark in Buwu Chinchio's body, right? The Slaughter Demon Venerable nodded, but his eyes flickered. He didn't expect Nietion to be so smart, immediately understanding it. He said, I can lay down a slaughter barrier in the Myriad Saints' ruins. Inside this barrier, the curse mark in Buwu Chinchio's body will be completely stimulated, and his strength will be greatly suppressed. To what extent? Nietion's eyes flickered as he asked. He had to make this clear. If Buwu Chinchio's strength was only suppressed by one minor realm, he could still kill him in one move. He will probably be suppressed by several minor realms. The Slaughter Demon Venerable wasn't sure and guessed. Nietion's face stiffened, and he couldn't help but turn unsightly. Wouldn't it be better if Indra or someone else fought against Buwu Chinchio inside the slaughter barrier? Of course not. The Slaughter Demon Venerable immediately waved his hand. Other cultivators inside the slaughter barrier will be even more suppressed, and they won't be able to exert their full strength. Could it be that the slaughter barrier doesn't suppress me? Nietion's eyes narrowed as he asked. The slaughter barrier is condensed from slaughter runes. You have the demonic god's energy in your body, so you can resist the slaughter barrier suppression. The Slaughter Demon Venerable explained, previously, you were able to break the restriction of the slaughter runes because the demonic god's energy has a suppressive effect on them. So that's how it is. Nietion had a helpless expression. It seemed like he had to fight this battle. Facing a peak paramount god, Nietion couldn't help but feel nervous, and he wasn't very confident. At this time, the Slaughter Demon Venerable cautiously asked, Nietion, if you open the forbidden runes now, what level will your strength reach? Late over God. Nietion nodded and said honestly, my battle prowess is enough to fight an early paramount god. I'm afraid that's not enough to fight Buwu Chinchio. The Slaughter Demon Venerable frowned. The slaughter barrier suppression is very strong, but Buwu Chinchio has the strength of a mid-paramount god at the very least. If he used his Black Lotus form, he would be able to fight a late paramount god. You're still too weak, so there's no way you can fight him. Then what should we do? Nietion's eyes narrowed, and his brows furrowed. It's indeed troublesome. The Slaughter Demon Venerable frowned, and his expression was unsightly. If Nietion fought Bu Wu Qianxiu now, it would be no different from courting death. But the others wouldn't be able to resist the suppression of the slaughter barrier, let alone Bu Wu Qianxiu. We need to find a way to increase your strength, the slaughter demon venerable said, but he couldn't think of a way to instantly increase Nie Tian's battle prowess. The corner of Nie Tian's mouth twitched, and he murmured, "If only I could increase the grade of the forbidden runes." It was impossible to instantly increase his strength, so the only way was to increase the grade of the forbidden runes. As long as the grade of the forbidden runes increased, Nie Tian's strength would increase by leaps and bounds. But it wasn't easy to increase the grade of the forbidden runes either. For a moment, the situation seemed to be in a stalemate. Perhaps I really can increase the grade of the forbidden runes. But at this time, the fat cat, who had been silent for a long time, suddenly spoke and looked at Rui Qinyu. Chapter 1874. Nie Tian was stunned when he saw the fat cat and the massacring demon turn to look at Rui Qinyu at the same time. He couldn't understand how Rui Qinyu's 9-color pupils had anything to do with his forbidden rune. Could it be that the 9-color pupils could increase the level of the forbidden rune? Rui Qinyu was also confused. She didn't know what the fat cat and the massacring demon were thinking. Fat, can the 9-color pupils really increase the level of the forbidden rune? Nie Tian looked at the fat cat and couldn't help but ask. Yes. The fat cat nodded and said, "The power of the 9-color pupils is very special. It can stimulate the power of many runes. You should remember that the 9-headed infant demon cocoon also absorbed the power of the 9-color pupils to awaken." Nie Tian's eyes tensed up. He remembered that the reason the 9-headed infant demon cocoon was able to awaken was because it absorbed the power of the 9-color pupils. It seemed that the power of the 9-color pupils was indeed special. Nie Tian was curious. Since the fat cat already knew that the 9-color pupils could stimulate the forbidden rune, why didn't it say so earlier? One must know that Nie Tian had been in danger a few times before. The little fat cat glanced at Nie Tian and guessed what he was thinking. It said, "The forbidden rune is a kind of darkness-type power. In order to activate the forbidden rune with the power of the 9-color eyes, you will need the help of killing Qi." The 3 forbidden runes were all dark-type powers, and the massacre Qi was also a dark-type power. Only with the help of the slaughter Qi could the power of the 9-colored pupil activate the forbidden rune to level up. Yes, the massacring demon venerable smiled and said, "Let's try it now and see to what level the 9-color pupils can enhance the forbidden rune to." "Sir Monster Lord, will it be dangerous for Nie Tian if we forcefully raise the level of the forbidden rune?" Rui Qinyu stepped forward and asked worriedly. She was a little worried. If the level of the forbidden rune was too high, it would put a lot of pressure on Nie Tian's body. Slaughtering venerable monster faintly smiled. He then looked at Nie Tian and said, "The forbidden art rune itself doesn't oppress a cultivator's martial body. On the contrary, it can greatly enhance a cultivator's martial body. However, once the restrictive runes were activated, the martial artist's strength would skyrocket. This was an extremely great pressure for martial artists. If a martial artist's martial body isn't strong enough, it's very likely that they won't be able to withstand the power after their strength skyrockets." Nie Tian nodded slightly. The slaughtering venerable demon was right. The 3 forbidden technique runes did not put any pressure on Nie Tian. Furthermore, it allowed Nie Tian's martial body to become far stronger than an ordinary warrior's. However, once the forbidden technique runes were activated and his strength increased, it would put an extremely great pressure on Nie Tian's martial body. Right now, Nie Tian's strength was that of a late high god. After activating the 3 forbidden techniques, his strength would rise to the late over god level. This was equivalent to him enduring the pressure of a late over god's aura at all times. However, this kind of pressure posed no threat to Nie Tian. But if the forbidden art rune was upgraded, Nie Tian's strength would skyrocket to the paramount god level. This kind of pressure would be a bit of a restriction to him. Nie Tian thought for a moment and said, "With my current martial body, I can withstand the power of an early paramount god." The slaughtering venerable's eyes narrowed slightly. "If you become an early paramount god, Do you have the confidence to fight a mid or late paramount god Bu Wu Qinxiu? Yes. Nietian nodded solemnly. His eyes were filled with domineering confidence. Very good. The slaughtering venerable smiled. Let's begin. All right. Nietian nodded with a smile, then looked at Rui Qinyu. Qinyu, trust me. Rui Qinyu nodded slightly, a faint smile on her delicate face. Next, Rui Qinyu walked to Nietian's side. Her pupils constricted slightly as she activated her 9-color pupils. Immediately, an enormous eye power was released, directly enveloping Nietian. Nietian felt the gentle aura of the eye power around him. He didn't resist and allowed the eye power to flow into his body. At the same time, the slaughtering venerable released a majestic aura of slaughter that spread toward Nietian. The eye power of the 9-color pupils and the aura of slaughter entered his body at the same time. Nietian immediately felt an extremely vast power, like a huge beast, pounding against his body. He endured the pain and didn't make a single sound. A moment later, Nietian began to slowly activate the Forbidden Art rune, merging it with the eye power and the aura of slaughter. At that moment, the Forbidden Art rune suddenly became violent and kept pounding against Nietian's martial physique. Nietian felt the Forbidden Art rune become stronger, and his martial physique was also improving at a crazy rate. His blood, meridians, and bones became stronger and stronger under the impact of the Forbidden Art rune. The pain that Nietian was enduring was almost the same as when he first merged the Forbidden Art rune. However, his divine sense remained awake, and he didn't make any sound. The slaughtering venerable demon looked at Nietian in astonishment. He thought to himself, this kid's willpower is too strong. With such talent and willpower, I'm afraid the 9 major realms will soon have an extraordinary sage. For the slaughtering venerable demon, the 9 major realms were just a small world. The real world was the all-heaven sacred realm. Soon, Rui Qinyu and the slaughtering venerable demon stopped moving. Nietian's aura also quickly stabilized. Rui Qinyu had used a large amount of the eye power of the 9-color pupils. Her face was slightly pale, and her forehead was covered in sweat. However, she didn't care. She took a step forward and came to Nietian's side. She said nervously, Nietian, are you all right? I'm fine. Nietian stood up. His body was extremely sharp, and he felt that there was endless energy in his body. The increase in the level of the Forbidden Art rune had made a qualitative leap for Nietian's overall strength. Nietian, what's the level of the Forbidden Art rune now? The fat cat couldn't help but ask with a smile. Nietian sensed it, and his expression changed slightly. He was stunned for a moment. Then he said, Earth rank primary. Before, the Forbidden Art rune's level was mystic middle rank, but now it had increased by 2 minor levels. It should be about there. The fat cat nodded with a smile. The 9-color pupils' eye power and slaughter chi can last for a few hours, enough for you to kill Bu Wu Qinxiu. And Nietian nodded heavily. His gaze shifted to the area outside the Myriad Saints' ancient tomb. A cold smile tugged at the corner of his mouth as he said coldly, Bu Wu Qinxiu, I'd like to see exactly how strong you are. Nietian knew that the increase in the Forbidden Art rune's level was only temporary. Once the 9-color pupils' eye power and slaughter chi disappeared, the Forbidden Art rune would return to its original level. However, to be able to experience the feeling of being powerful was also very good for him. Chapter 1875. Noticing that Nietian's Forbidden Technique rune had improved, the slaughtering demon venerable didn't hesitate and started to arrange the slaughtering enchantment. Nietian stared at the slaughtering demon venerable with a fiery gaze. He too wanted to see how strong the slaughtering enchantment was. The slaughtering demon venerable sucked in a deep breath. His body trembled as his body began to disperse, turning into an incomparably dense slaughter chi that permeated the entire Myriad Saints' forgotten tomb. Nietian was dumbfounded. He didn't expect the slaughtering demon venerable to turn his body into the slaughtering enchantment. Nietian, I is only a soul. The slaughtering enchantment won't last long. You must kill Bawu Qianxiu as soon as possible." In the void, the slaughtering demon venerable's voice resounded, sounding ethereal. Niet Tian nodded solemnly, feeling a little nervous in his heart. Following that, Fat Cat returned to the origin fetus space, while Rui Qinyu returned to the 9 extremities. The myriad saints' forgotten tomb is about to open. The slaughtering demon venerable's voice resounded once more as a white passage appeared in midair. At the same time, outside the myriad saints' forgotten tomb, Bawu Qianxiu was aimlessly searching for traces of Niet Tian. He was on the verge of losing his mind. He clearly followed Niet Tian into the 10th floor, but he couldn't find Niet Tian's shadow at all. "Smelly brat, where are you? Get your ass out here right now." Bawu Qianxiu bellowed like a savage beast, exuding a tyrannical aura. Boom! At this moment, the void suddenly shook and a white passageway appeared. Looking at the white passage, Bawu Qianxiu was stunned at first, but in a flicker, he entered the passage. He had been searching for Niet Tian for such a long time. Now that a passage suddenly appeared in front of him, of course he couldn't wait to enter. The moment Bawu Qianxiu entered the passage, he felt an overwhelming pressure coming from the space around him, causing his expression to change. He wanted to leave, but it was already too late. In the next instant, his figure appeared in the myriad saints' ruins. Bawu Qianxiu was stunned. He suddenly saw the endless bones above his head and the sea of bones below his feet. He even felt a strong pressure from the bones, causing him to cry out in surprise, "What is this place?" "Bawu Qianxiu, you're finally here. I've been waiting for you for a long time." At this moment, an indifferent voice rang out as a silhouette appeared. It was none other than Niet Tian. "Brad, it's you." When Bawu Qianxiu saw Niet Tian again, his pupils suddenly shrank, and his eyes revealed an extremely strong, killing intent. At this moment, he wished for nothing more than to skin Niet Tian alive. However, Bawu Qianxiu didn't make a move immediately. His pair of cold eyes stared at Niet Tian and said in a deep voice, "Smelly brat, you really have guts. You actually dare to appear in front of this lord." Bawu Qianxiu could sense that the current Niet Tian was much stronger than before, but his strength remained the same. He was still a late-stage high god, which made him very puzzled. "Bawu Qianxiu, you also have guts to dare to enter the slaughter boundary." Niet Tian put on a faint smile and replied indifferently. "Slaughter boundary?" Bawu Qianxiu couldn't help but stare blankly for a moment when he heard those 4 words. In the next moment, he sensed something and his face suddenly changed. He cried out in surprise. "The slaughter seal in this lord's body has suddenly become active. What's going on?" "I have already told you, this is the slaughter boundary. Your slaughter seal will be greatly stimulated here, and your strength will be suppressed." Niet Tian put on a faint smile and a playful look on his face. "Smelly brat, you." Bawu Qianxiu's expression changed. He wanted to forcibly suppress the slaughter seal, but instead, he felt suffocated and couldn't utter a word. "Bawu Qianxiu, from the moment you entered the slaughter boundary, you were destined to die here." Niet Tian put on a faint smile. His celestial demon, nascent embryo, released the power of celestial demon. The slaughter boundary not only stimulated the power of the slaughter seal, but also had a very strong suppressive force on martial artists. If it weren't for the celestial demon, nascent embryo, Niet Tian wouldn't have been able to resist the suppressive force of the slaughter boundary. Bawu Qianxiu's eyes sank, but soon after, he calmed down and said in a cold voice, "Smelly brat, no wonder you dare to appear. It turns out that you have laid a trap for this lord to fall for it. But you are too naive. Even if this lord's strength is suppressed, killing a mere high god is no different from crushing an ant." "Is that so?" Niet Tian laughed. Then, he released the forbidden runes all over his body. Black dragon-shaped runes surged around his body, and his aura suddenly soared. "Huh?" Bawu Qianxiu couldn't help but frown. He didn't expect that Niet Tian had such powerful runes in his body that could instantly increase his strength. In just an instant, the 3 forbidden runes were activated, and Niet Tian's strength directly rose from late high god to early stage supreme god. Nietion's eyes couldn't help but tremble when he sensed the aura around him. This was the power of a supreme god, and it was beyond his imagination. Early stage, supreme god. Bu Wuqianxiu looked at Nietion, and his face suddenly changed. He couldn't imagine what kind of runes could be so strange that they could instantly increase the strength of a high god to the supreme god realm. In an instant, Bu Wuqianxiu's eyes revealed a burning greed. If he could get his hands on those runes, he would definitely have power close to that of Saint. Nietion saw through Bu Wuqianxiu's thoughts. With a faint smile, he said provocatively, "Bu Wuqianxiu, you're too greedy. The 3 forbidden talismans aren't something you can get." "How arrogant!" Bu Wuqianxiu roared. His body blurred into motion, and he thrust his palm out. Black energy surged out like a raging sea, and a terrifying palm image bore down on Nietion. Nietion wasn't afraid. Starlight Heaven Slash appeared in his hand, and he thrust it forward. Sword will whistled through the air, and sword light shot out in all directions. Boom! The palm image and the sword image collided, and a huge explosion rang out. Space trembled slightly, and the boundless energy transformed into waves of energy that rolled out in all directions. Nietion retreated slightly, and then steadied his footing. Bu Wuqianxiu, on the other hand, was like an old tree rooted to the ground. The suppressive power of the slaughter aegis had forced Bu Wuqianxiu to unleash the power of a mid-supreme god. Even so, Nietion was still a bit too weak to fight Bu Wuqianxiu head-on. But now, Bu Wuqianxiu's face was not filled with a smile, but with shock and dread. He had never imagined that Nietion's martial body would be so strong that it could withstand the power of an early paramount god. Furthermore, he had never imagined that Nietion would be so strong that he would be able to withstand the power of an early paramount god. Nietion was simply too terrifying. Chapter 1876. Inside the boundary of slaughter at the myriad saints' remains, Nietion stood in midair. Terrifying sword aura surged around him. His entire being was like a sword that could kill. Bu Wuqianxiu's expression changed when he sensed the sword intent emanating from Nietion's body. He exclaimed in surprise, "This kid's sword art is only at the sword essence realm. Why is his sword intent so strong?" Although Bu Wuqianxiu wasn't a swordsman, he had seen and fought countless swordsmen. But at this moment, he felt a trace of danger from Nietion's sword intent. He couldn't help but feel nervous. One should know that even when he fought against Gui Wu Kuangsha, who was at the unity of sword and martial arts realm, he didn't have such a feeling. "Bu Wuqianxiu, are you afraid?" Nietion stared at Bu Wuqianxiu with blazing eyes. He could read the fear in the latter's eyes. He couldn't help but sneer. The provocation on his face became even more obvious. "Afraid?" Bu Wuqianxiu calmed down. He sneered and said arrogantly, "I'm a supreme expert. Why would I be afraid of a lowly high god ant? What a joke." With a furious roar, Marshal Qianxiu thrust his palm out again. A black lotus appeared in midair and blossomed in the blink of an eye. A dark, murderous aura spread out, and like a terrifying dark cloud, it rapidly pressed down on Nietion. Nietion felt a trace of pressure, but the corners of his mouth curled into a cold smile. Starlight surged out from his body, condensing into a star soul armor. He then slashed out with Starlight Heavenly Slash. The sword shadow was as majestic as a mountain, majestic and powerful, slashing down on the Black Lotus. Swish! A sword light tens of thousands of meters long appeared, like a waterfall of flowing light, falling straight on the Black Lotus. Rumble! In an instant, the two enormous forces collided. A terrifying roar sounded in the air. Billowing airwaves spread out from the center of the collision, spreading in all directions. Nietion's current strength was truly terrifying. He wasn't at a disadvantage when facing Wu Qianxiu head-on. The Slaughter Venerable Demon, who had transformed into the Slaughter Barrier, captured the scene before him perfectly. He could clearly feel the tyrannical power in the air at that moment. The massacring Venerable Beast did not expect Nietion's strength to be this powerful. Nietion's position in his heart rose once again. He even felt that not only was Nietion the greatest genius of the 9 realms, even the geniuses of the all-heaven sacred world paled in comparison to Nietion. Bang! Bang! In the next moment, 2 muffled sounds came from the void. Nietion and Bu Wuqianxiu's figures retreated at the same time. Then they stood still at the same time. 2 figures with majestic auras, like 2 mountains facing each other in the air. How was this possible? Bu Wuqianxiu's eyes slightly narrowed, and his face suddenly changed. The horror in his heart was revealed on his face. Nietion's battle prowess far exceeded his expectations, and he was now able to fight him head-on. Although Bu Wuqianxiu was being suppressed by the barrier, he was still a mid-paramount god. He had assumed that he would be able to kill Nietion with a single move, but never could he have imagined that the fight would turn out this way. I told you, Bu Wuqianxiu, that the real surprise is yet to come. Nietion's figure was as sharp as a sword as he said coldly, wreathed in a fierce fighting spirit. Bu Wuqianxiu's eyes glittered as he realized that Nietion was now a true opponent, and a formidable one at that. Nietion knew that he couldn't afford to prolong the fight. Therefore, he shouted, "Astral Soul God Armor, activate!" Both the Astral Soul Shield and the Astral Soul Armor fused together, and at the same time, a pair of Astral Soul wings appeared on his back. Bu Wuqianxiu said, suddenly sensing that Nietion's energy was growing stronger. Frowning, his expression flickered, and a look of terror appeared in his eyes. Starfire incinerates the sea. A cold smile appeared at the corner of Nietion's mouth. With a bellow, he slashed down with the star heavenly slash. An enormous streak of sword light appeared in the air, and a sword shadow dashed towards Bu Wuqianxiu. The sword shadow was like fire, directly forming a huge sea of fire in the sky. The whole sky was about to be set ablaze. What a powerful sword move! Bu Wuqianxiu murmured, his expression flickering. He thrust his palm out, unleashing a mountainous palm that pulsed with boundless pressure. At the same time, an enormous black lotus appeared around him, forming a black lotus shield. Boom! In the next moment, there was a loud explosion, and the black palm in the air directly collapsed. The terrible flame sword fell on the black lotus shield, and the space suddenly stagnated, as if time and space had stopped. Boom! Shockwaves rolled out as the flame sword and the black lotus shield shattered, and Bu Wuqianxiu was sent tumbling backward. Nietion was also pushed back slightly, but he quickly regained his balance. Bu Wuqianxiu retreated thousands of meters, and 2 black lotuses appeared behind him like wings. He shook them violently and stabilized himself. He stood in the air, his eyes filled with killing intent, and a trace of blood trickled down the corner of his mouth. It was hard to imagine that Nietion could injure Bu Wuqianxiu with just one strike. Damn it! Bu Wuqianxiu growled, his eyes filled with rage. He never thought that he would be injured by Nietion. Bu Wuqianxiu, you've lived for hundreds of thousands of years, but your strength is only so. Nietion sneered. Although he said it casually, Nietion was extremely cautious. He had pushed his strength to the limit in that strike, but even so, he only slightly injured Bu Wuqianxiu and didn't cause any substantial damage. Bu Wuqianxiu's strength was much stronger than Nietion had imagined. Brat, you're too arrogant. Upon hearing Nietion's mockery, Bu Wuqianxiu flew into a rage. With a cold snort, he unleashed a boundless aura of slaughter from all over his body. In the next moment, his entire body was enveloped in darkness, like a vortex of slaughter. Nietion frowned slightly. It seemed that Bu Wuqianxiu was angry. Brat died. In the next moment, Bu Wuqianxiu's sinister voice echoed out. Immediately afterwards, an endless amount of killing intent spread out, and a black lotus that was 10,000 meters long blossomed. A terrifying aura spread out, and a terrifying pressure crashed down on Nietion like raging waves. In the blink of an eye, Nietion felt an enormous pressure bearing down on him, causing his chest to tighten and his eyes to darken. Bu Wuqianxiu once again used the Black Lotus, and his overall strength had a qualitative leap. Nie Tian had seen with his own eyes that Bu Wuqianxiu used the Black Lotus to injure Yi Qinghai and Guiwu Guangsha, so he knew how terrifying the Black Lotus was. Die! Bu Wuqianxiu's voice resounded again, and a Black Lotus blotted out the sky like a curtain, pressing down on Nie Tian. Chapter 1877. Roar! The instant the golden dragon appeared, its draconic might shook the heavens and earth. Die! Nie Tian roared in a low voice. The golden dragon behind him surged forth, slamming into the gigantic lotus flower. Rumble! In the air, the Black Lotus and the golden dragon collided head-on. A moment later, endless rumbling sounds rang out as the heavens and earth turned chaotic. Terrifying energies wreaked havoc in the air, causing the entire myriad saints' forgotten tomb to tremble. Boom! However, in the next moment, a terrifying sound rang out. Nie Tian saw that the Black Lotus actually left a terrifying crack on the golden dragon's body, after which the crack directly exploded and the golden dragon's body began to crumble apart. Boom! Chi, chi, chi. Following which, boundless draconic chi permeated the air. In the next instant, Nie Tian felt a terrifying pressure bearing down on him, catching him unprepared. His entire body was flung backwards. Hovering in midair, Nie Tian suddenly flapped his star soul wings to stabilize himself. However, countless bloody wounds appeared all over his body, from which blood was gushing out. In the blink of an eye, he was covered in blood. Nie Tian stabilized his body, a look of terror on his face as his eyes trembled uncontrollably. He didn't expect Bu Wuqianxiu to be so powerful after using his true form, the Black Lotus. Even if he used his full strength, he still couldn't withstand a single strike from Bu Wuqianxiu. Not dead, the boundless waves of qi dissipated, revealing Bu Wuqianxiu's silhouette. He stared at Nie Tian with a fiery light in his eyes, not joy, but a deeper sense of shock. Using the true form of the Black Lotus was enough to increase his combat prowess by several times, but even so, he still failed to kill Nie Tian. How could he not be shocked? Nie Tian's strength caused Bu Wuqianxiu to feel a deep sense of awe. Nie Tian drew in a deep breath. The earth vein origin in his body released a powerful life force, instantly healing all the wounds on his body. Nie Tian, you can't use the ley line anymore. The slaughter barrier will weaken. Monarch Massacre Demon's voice suddenly rang out to Nie Tian. Nie Tian was slightly stunned, but he immediately understood. Dragon Chi could weaken the stability of space-time. Similarly, it could also weaken the stability of the boundary. If he used his Dragon Chi again, the slaughter boundary might not be able to withstand it. Kid, your strength has indeed exceeded my expectations. You really have a lot of good stuff on you. Bu Wuqianxiu calmed down and stepped on the Black Lotus. His eyes shone with intense desire as he said, "In a few days, everything on your body will become mine." Really? Nie Tianling laughed, and the sword aura around his body surged. He roared, starry sky-devouring. In the blink of an eye, a majestic sword intent condensed in the air, and a sword shadow appeared. It was a fusion of water and fire, releasing a powerful sword intent that pressed down on Bu Wuqianxiu. How dare you be so arrogant in front of my Black Lotus body? Ridiculous! Bu Wuqianxiu sneered, and his silhouette flickered, disappearing into the Black Lotus. In the next moment, the Black Lotus trembled, and a black force appeared, condensing into a black claw in the air, directly grabbing the sword shadow. Dang! A crisp sound rang out. The black claw suddenly exerted force, and the sword shadow in the air actually collapsed. Seeing this scene, Nie Tian couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. He didn't expect that his sword intent would be so weak in front of the Black Lotus body. Die for me. Bu Wuqianxiu's cold laughter rang out, and the black claw suddenly moved, directly grabbing towards Nie Tian. Nie Tian's eyes trembled slightly, and the astral soul wings on his back fluttered, and his speed increased to the extreme, dodging the black claw. Dodge? Let's see where you can hide. With a cold laugh, Wu Qianqiu's Black Lotus once again unleashed a terrifying black aura. In the next moment, countless Black Lotus flowers appeared in the air, which rapidly morphed into sharp black blades that shot towards Nie Tian like storm. Astral Soul Shield. Nie Tian roared in a low voice and released astral energy from his body. A huge astral soul shield appeared outside of his body. Bang, bang, bang. The black blades bombarded the astral soul shield, and an ear-piercing muffled sound burst out, and soon, glaring cracks appeared on the astral soul shield. Nie Tian felt a terrifying pressure coming from the space, and it actually made him feel suffocated. Bang! The next moment, the astral soul shield finally couldn't withstand the pressure, and with a loud sound, it directly collapsed. Seeing that the situation was not good, Nie Tian flapped the astral soul wings on his back, and at the same time, he stabbed out with his sword and borrowed the force of the sword's shadow to fly even faster. Pu. Although Nie Tian's movement skill was strange, and his speed was extremely fast, there were too many black blades in the air, and countless black blades directly penetrated his body, turning his whole body into a sieve of blood. Nie Tian forcibly stabilized his body and stood in the air. His whole body was dripping with blood, and his face had also become deathly pale. Only a pair of eyes were as firm as before. Ha 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 ha, Marshal Chinchio said, laughing maniacally. Weren't you very arrogant, you brat? Now you're facing my Black Lotus true form. What gives you the right to be so arrogant? Nie Tian furrowed his brows as his mind raced. Marshal Chinchio's true form was so terrifying that Nie Tian couldn't even fight back. Even if he used his dragon meridians, he wouldn't be able to block the true form. In the face of the true form, Nie Tian could only passively take a beating. Nie Tian was fairly certain that Marshal Chinchio's battle prowess was at the late paramount god level, or perhaps even close to the peak. Yang Qi, on the other hand, was only an early paramount god, and he was under constant pressure. Considering the circumstances, it would be virtually impossible for Nie Tian to defeat Marshal Chinchio. Smelly brat, do you have any last words? Wu Chinchio laughed maniacally. His figure appeared once again, and his entire person became crazy. He wanted to kill Nie Tian. As long as he could kill Nie Tian and absorb his devil god blood, he would be able to completely suppress the massacring curse. When that time came, Marshal Chinchio would be able to leave the domain of darkness and return to the 9 realm verses. Nie Tian's expression flickered, and killing intent flickered in his eyes. Marshal Chinchio, our battle isn't over yet, he said in a cold voice. It's hard to say who will have any last words. With these words, a crimson light suddenly burst forth from Nie Tian's body. Like the setting sun, the endless red light illuminated the entire world. Marshal Chinchio's eyes narrowed, and his expression flickered. Does this brat have an even stronger trump card? Nie Tian's face was as calm as still water, and his eyes were as calm as water. He did have an even stronger trump card, and that was his primordial spirit, the 9th class Chaos Beast. Nie Tian hadn't used the 9th class Chaos Beast in a long time, and he wasn't sure how strong it was right now. After all, he was an early paramount god. Moreover, Nie Tian could vaguely sense that the chaotic energy he had absorbed not long ago had affected the 9th class Chaos Beast. Chapter 1878. Inside the slaughter boundary, Nie Tian's body emitted a scarlet halo. The entire Myriad Saints' Forgotten Tomb was bathed in the scarlet light. Wu Chinchio frowned slightly when he felt the scarlet light in the air. He suddenly understood and laughed arrogantly. Stinking brat, I was wondering what your final trump card would be. So it's your primordial spirit. You're really stupid. Godly realm martial artists have long abandoned their primordial spirits. You actually want to use your primordial spirit to defeat me? Dream on. Wu Chinchio was indeed frightened just now. He thought that Nie Tian would definitely use an extremely powerful trump card. He didn't expect the latter to use his primordial spirit. primordial spirits were already something that godly realm martial artists had abandoned. Other than spirit soldiers, very few martial artists would use primordial spirits after reaching the godly realm. To Bu Wu Qianxiu, Nie Tian using his primordial spirit was simply a joke. But at this time, the massacred demon Venerable was extremely shocked. His body had turned into the slaughter boundary, and his expression couldn't be seen. If he was in his human form, he would definitely be petrified. This aura, it's actually... The massacred demon Venerable was shocked. His voice was trembling. One could imagine the horror in his heart. He sensed an aura from Nie Tian's nascent soul that shocked him to the core. This made him think, primordial chaos descends, 9 extremes devours the heavens. At this time, the scarlet halo around Nie Tian's body became extremely dense. The figure of a scarlet beast appeared and gradually solidified. The enormous body was actually 8,000 to 9,000 meters long. It was Nie Tian's primordial spirit, the 9 extremes chaos beast. Roar! The moment the 9 extremes chaos beast appeared, a vast and boundless aura spread out. A loud roar pierced through the clouds and rocks, resounding through the 9 heavens. The tyrannical aura of a ruler enveloped the entire slaughter boundary. It was extremely domineering. The 9 extremes chaos beast. It really is the 9 extremes chaos beast. The massacred demon Venerable exclaimed in his heart the moment the 9 extremes chaos beast appeared. The shock in his heart had reached its peak. He had never imagined that the legendary 9 extremes chaos beast, the 9 extremes heaven-devouring beast, would actually appear in the 9 major domains. In fact, when Nie Tian released the aura of his primordial spirit, Slaughter Venerable Demon had already expected it, but when he saw it for himself, he was still shocked. The 9th level Chaos Beast was a primordial spirit that should not have appeared in the realm. Why would it appear in Nie Tian's body? The Slaughter Venerable Demon really couldn't understand what was going on in front of him. He had too many doubts in his heart, but he couldn't and didn't dare to voice them out. At that moment, Bu Wu Qianxiu felt the aura of the 9th extreme Chaos Beast. His originally disdainful look turned into a daze, and his entire body stiffened. How could he have thought that Nie Tian's primordial spirit was actually so powerful? Just the aura of the 9th extreme Chaos Beast alone was enough to make Wu Qianxiu feel extremely pressured. Now, how is this possible? Bu Wu Qianxiu's voice was trembling, and his face was filled with horror. How could a primordial spirit that had been abandoned by a God-state martial artist become so powerful in Nie Tian's body? What kind of existence was Nie Tian? Nie Tian could not help but smile when he felt the aura of the 9th level Chaos Beast. He had not expected the 9th level Chaos Beast to grow to such a level. Of course, Nie Tian knew that the 9th level Chaos Beast was still connected to him. The reason why it could be so powerful was because its strength had reached the early stage of the Supreme God Realm. Nie Tian took a look and was shocked to find that the huge body of the 9th extreme Chaos Beast was surrounded by a scarlet halo, and there were faint black runes surging. Nie Tian could tell at a glance that those black runes were the chaotic energy that he had absorbed earlier. The chaotic energy had indeed affected the 9th level Chaos Beast. But Wu Qianxiu, do I have the right to be arrogant now? Then Nie Tian calmed down. He stood on top of the 9th level Chaos Beast like a peerless emperor and spoke coldly and arrogantly. Damn it! Bu Wu Qianxiu roared. His entire body was trembling, and his eyes were bloodshot. He was obviously enraged to the extreme. He roared, "You're just an origin spirit. Why would I be afraid of you?" As soon as he finished speaking, Bu Wu Qianxiu's figure disappeared into the Black Lotus. Then a patch of Black Lotus appeared and turned into a black claw in the air, grabbing at the 9th level Chaos Beast. Little 9, destroy him. The corner of Nie Tian's mouth twitched, and his eyes were filled with extreme contempt. Roar! The 9th level Chaos Beast roared into the sky, and the entire killing barrier shook. The next moment, the 9th level Chaos Beast's huge body rushed forward, and its scarlet claws struck out, directly smashing the Black Lotus in the air into pieces. Seeing this scene, Tion's expression involuntarily changed, and he was quite surprised. Of course, he knew how powerful the Black Lotus was. When he used the dragon vein just now, the Scarlet Gold Dragon was directly smashed into pieces by the Black Lotus. The 9th level Chaos Beast body was too strong now. It was so strong that it was sick. At this time, the 9th level Chaos Beast flapped its scarlet wings, and its figure was like a huge fireball as it rushed towards the Black Lotus in the air. No! Wu Qinqiu sensed danger and shouted. The Black Lotus retreated quickly in the air, but it was still a step too late. Boom! The 9th level Chaos Beast's claw struck down heavily on the Black Lotus. Suddenly, there was a loud sound, and the huge Black Lotus was smashed into pieces, and a huge hole appeared. My real body. The next moment, Wu Qinqiu's tragic roar resounded in the air, and it was very piercing. Tion's throat moved, and he was stunned. He muttered, "The 9th level Chaos Beast is too sick." Tion did not expect that Wu Qinqiu's Black Lotus body could not fight back at all in front of the 9th level Chaos Beast. "Scoundrel, I will fight it out with you." Wu Qinqiu was shocked and furious. He roared, and the Black Lotuses bloomed. In the center of the lotuses, a beam of black light shot towards the 9 extreme Chaos Beast like a huge arrow. "Little 9, be careful." Tion's eyes trembled slightly, and he shouted. But the 9th level Chaos Beast was not afraid at all. Its huge head moved suddenly, and then it spat out a scarlet flame from its mouth. It was like a fire pillar, blazing and vast. Boom! Chi chi chi. The attack from the Black Lotus's heart was blocked by the scarlet fire pillar, and an ear-piercing sound was heard in the air. At this moment, Wu Qinqiu was completely in despair. The attack just now was his strongest attack, but it was easily blocked by the 9th level Chaos Beast, and he had completely lost his last chance of winning. Boom! In the next instant, the crimson pillar of fire slammed into the Black Lotus, causing the space around it to tremble. Time and space froze for a moment, and after that, a boundless amount of energy exploded outwards, causing the Black Lotus to shatter into pieces, transforming into a boundless amount of black chi that dissipated into the air. Chapter 1879. Boom, boom, boom. The 9th extreme Chaos Beast's mighty attack shattered the Black Lotus in the sky, turning it into an endless killing aura that spread throughout the space. When Tion saw this, his eyes widened, and his face revealed a look of disbelief. He had never expected the 9th extreme Chaos Beast to be so powerful that it could shatter the Black Lotus in one blow. This kind of power was too frightening and unimaginable. The physical body of the 9th extreme Chaos Beast had reached a level that Tion could not comprehend. Roar! The 9th extreme Chaos Beast roared into the sky, and its whole body released a fiery red halo. It was like a ripple, circulating in the void, dazzling and colorful. At this moment, the 9th extreme Chaos Beast was the absolute king of the space-time, looking down on everything. Tion calmed down a little, moved, and stepped on the 9th extreme Chaos Beast. At this time, the killing aura in the sky dissipated, and a trembling figure appeared. It was Wu Qinqiu. Wu Qinqiu's Black Lotus body had been destroyed, and he had become a faint shadow, flickering faintly. His whole body was wrapped in a frightening, killing curse seal, and it seemed like he would disappear at any time. Tion sensed Wu Qinqiu's aura. The latter was only a remnant soul, and he was no longer a threat to him. "Little 9, go back." Tion smiled faintly, and let the 9th extreme Chaos Beast return to the chaotic origin coffin. Roar! The 9th extreme Chaos Beast roared, and its huge body instantly shrunk, turning into a scarlet halo and disappearing. "Wu Qinqiu, you have lost." Tion took a step forward and smiled faintly, his lips curling up in a confident arc. At this time, his whole aura had already dissipated, and his strength had returned to the late-stage high-level deity level. "This is impossible." Impossible. Bu Wu Qianxiu looked like he had gone crazy, and his illusory figure was trembling, and his expression was somewhat ferocious. He had never dreamed that he would be defeated by Nie Tian. Nie Tian, an existence like an ant in his eyes, had actually defeated him at this time. How would he accept this? Nothing is impossible. You've lost, Nie Tian said solemnly. His face was filled with killing intent. Since he had defeated Bu Wu Qianxiu, of course, he would not leave any chance for the latter to survive. No, don't kill me, don't kill me. Sensing Nie Tian's killing intent, Bu Wu Qianxiu's expression suddenly changed. He was incomparably terrified, and his voice became somewhat shrill. Bu Wu Qianxiu was not someone who was afraid of death, but he had yet to exact his revenge. His mortal enemy, Nine Deities' Calamity, was still alive, and she was the strongest person in the Nine Realms. If Bu Wu Qianxiu died just like that, his heart was really unwilling. Bu Wu Qianxiu, you should know very well that I can't let you live. Nie Tian took another step forward. Right now, as long as he slightly used his sword qi, he would be able to completely obliterate Bu Wu Qianxiu. However, he did not do so because he still had doubts in his heart. What are you doing? Bu Wu Qianxiu subconsciously stepped back and exclaimed, as long as you don't kill me, I'll do anything you want. It's impossible for me to not kill you. Nie Tian Long sneered and said, if you were the one who won now, I'm sure you would also kill me without hesitation. Since you are a legendary expert of the Nine Realms, you should understand the principle of winner takes all. Bu Wu Qianxiu's eyes suddenly darkened. He actually calmed down and was momentarily speechless. Nie Tian was right. If he were the one who won now, perhaps he wouldn't even give Nie Tian a chance to speak. Winner takes all. Bu Wu Qianxiu understood this principle very well. If it wasn't for this, he wouldn't have holed up in the realm of darkness and watched as Nine Deities' Calamity stood at the peak of the Nine Realms and was revered by the people. Bu Wu Qianxiu, I have some questions to ask you. As long as you answer honestly, I will give you a quick death, and I promise you that I will personally kill your mortal enemy, Nine Deities' Calamity. Nie Tian's expression was calm and cold. Bu Wu Qianxiu knew that he couldn't escape death, so he calmed down and said, what do you want to know? I want to ask you about a person. Nie Tian said in a deep voice. His eyes revealed a trace of unconcealable passion. Ask about a person? Who? Bu Wu Qianxiu was stunned and immediately asked. Nie Fenghua. Nie Tian's eyes slightly narrowed as he said name. Nie Fenghua, Nie Tian's father. This was the person Nie Tian wanted to ask about. Nie Fenghua was imprisoned by the Holy Parliament, and his whereabouts were still unknown. Yi Qinghai had always been looking for him. This was the reason why Yi Qinghai appeared in the realm of darkness. Since Yi Qinghai was hiding beside Bu Wu Qianxiu, and Bu Wu Qianxiu was the former president of the Holy Parliament, perhaps he really did know something. Nie Fenghua? Bu Wu Qianxiu was stunned, and his expression couldn't help but change slightly. You really know? Nie Tian completely caught Bu Wu Qianxiu's reaction, and his expression couldn't help but change as he exclaimed. From Bu Wu Qianxiu's reaction, Bu Wu Qianxiu clearly knew something. Bu Wu Qianxiu calmed down a lot and said in a deep voice, Guardian Extreme, Ian has mentioned this name to me. It's a person imprisoned by the Nine Calamities, right? Yes. Nie Tian firmly nodded. His eyes shone as he waited for Bu Wu Qianxiu to continue. Bu Wu Qianxiu stared at Nie Tian and asked, Nie Fenghua should be a member of the Nie family. Since you have the Fiend God origin embryo, you should also be a member of the Nie family. What is your relationship with Nie Fenghua? Nie Tian didn't hide it and nodded. He is my father and son. Bu Wu Qianxiu seemed to have guessed something at this time. He unexpectedly smiled and said, Boy from the Nie family, I really want to know why the Nine Calamities imprisoned your father. Nie Tian was slightly stunned. He thought for a moment and said, Because of me. Then, Nie Tian briefly explained the matter of Nie Fenghua. Nie Fenghua was imprisoned by the Holy Parliament because of the appearance of Nie Tian. And now, the Holy Parliament and the Wind and Cloud Alliance were once again at daggers drawn because of Nie Tian's upcoming child. The cycle of history was actually so shockingly similar. Ha ha. Bu Wu Qianxiu actually laughed after listening to Nie Tian. He only stopped after a long time and said, 9 calamities. Oh, 9 calamities. You are still so narrow-minded and intolerant. A mere fiend god origin embryo already scared you to this extent, to the point of becoming enemies with the Wind and Cloud Alliance. Sigh. It seems that the holy parliament that I single-handedly established will be destroyed by your hands. Nie Tian looked at Bu Wu Qianxiu and slightly frowned. He said, Bu Wu Qianxiu, I have told you everything you wanted to know. Now, it's your turn to tell me what I want to know. Bu Wu Qianxiu looked at Nie Tian and seemed to think for a long time. He said, Boy from the Nie family, I can tell you where Nie Fenghua is imprisoned, but I have a condition. You must let me live. Nie Tian's eyes slightly narrowed. His expression changed and revealed his killing intent. Chapter 1880. Who is it? In the Holy Remains tomb, Bu Wu Qianxiu suddenly heard another voice and could not help but exclaim. He immediately looked ahead and saw a white-robed old man. Demon Venerable. Nie Tian was stunned and looked at the white-robed old man. It was none other than the slaughtering Demon Venerable. He did not expect that the slaughtering Demon Venerable would suddenly appear at this time. You are the slaughtering Demon Venerable. Bu Wu Qianxiu was stunned. His eyes were full of shock and doubt. Although he was the master of the slaughtering road, he had never seen the slaughtering Demon Venerable. At this moment, his surprise could be imagined. Yes, the slaughtering Demon Venerable nodded slightly, stared at Bu Wu Qianxiu, and said, Bu Wu Qianxiu, haven't you always wanted to see I? I is here now, what do you want to say? Bu Wu Qianxiu was stunned for a few seconds before he finally reacted. His eyes trembled violently as he instantly understood something and said, Slaughtering Demon Venerable, you have recognized the boy of the Nie family and want him to be the new master of the slaughtering road, right? The slaughtering Demon Venerable smiled faintly and said, I has indeed recognized Nie Tian, but he will not become the new master of the slaughtering road. Huh? Bu Wu Qianxiu was stunned for a moment, then said with joy, Demon Venerable, the master of the slaughtering road is still me, right? The slaughtering Demon Venerable laughed, then shook his head and said, Bu Wu Qianxiu, although you and the slaughtering road are bound by blood, you will never be the real master of the slaughtering road and will never be able to obtain the real power of the slaughtering road. I has chosen the master of the slaughtering road, but unfortunately, it is not you. Why? Bu Wu Qianxiu was stunned, then roared. His whole person seemed to have gone crazy, unable to accept what was in front of him. Because the murderous aura on your body is too strong. The slaughtering Demon Venerable was still calm and said lightly, I don't believe it. Bu Wu Qianxiu became agitated again, shouting, I, Bu Wu Qianxiu, am a legend rank expert of the 9 domains. I have endured the torture of the slaughter curse for hundreds of thousands of years. Why can't I become the master of the path of slaughter? Murderous Demon Venerable shook his head helplessly as he looked at Bu Wu Qianxiu, who was on the verge of going insane. He said lightly, Bu Wu Qianxiu, your hands are stained with too much blood. Your heart has long been blinded by the desire for revenge. You will never be able to comprehend the true essence of killing. Nie Tian looked at Bu Wu Qianxiu and frowned slightly. Speaking of which, Bu Wu Qianxiu was also a person with a bumpy life. All those years ago, he had relied on his own strength to develop the Holy Parliament into the #1 power in the 9 great territories. How great of an achievement was that? Unfortunately, he didn't know who he was and mistakenly believed in the 9 gods of calamity. In the end, he ended up like this. It could be said that the tragedy of Bu Wu Qianxiu was all caused by the 9 gods of calamity. Bu Wu Qianxiu, your Black Lotus body has been destroyed, and the slaughter curse can no longer be controlled. Even if Nie Tian doesn't kill you, you won't be able to live for long. After a while, murderous Demon Venerable waited for Bu Wu Qianxiu to calm down a little before saying lightly, Am I really going to die? Bu Wu Qianxiu's expression froze. His eyes became dull, as if he had lost all faith in an instant. Murderous demon Venerable sighed softly and said, "Bu Chinchio, your life is indeed very tragic. At this time, you are really unwilling to die. But have you ever thought about it? Those who enter the path of slaughter, what kind of tragedy do they have? In the end, this is a world where the strong are respected. Even if you are unwilling, you can't change anything." Speaking of this, murderous demon Venerable looked at Bu Chinchio and said indifferently, "I advise you to accept reality." Bu Chinchio was stunned, his body trembled, and the last glimmer of light in his eyes completely disappeared. Murderous demon Venerable shook his head again and said to Nietian, "If you have any questions, ask them quickly. He can't hold on for long." Nietian nodded. He took a step forward and said, "Bu Chinchio, I'll tell you where my father is imprisoned." Bu Chinchio jerked his head up to look at Nietian. His absent-minded eyes flickered as he said, "Nietian, I want you to swear that you'll kill the 9 calamity gods." Nietian, swear to heaven that I will not give up until I kill the 9 gods of calamity," Nietianling said coldly, his eyes full of murderous intent. The 9 gods of calamity was really insidious, and Nietian would definitely not let him go. Bu Chinchio was the teacher of the 9 gods of calamity, but he was still so miserable because of the latter. No one knew how the 9 gods of calamity would treat Nia Fenghua and his wife. "Good." Bu Chinchio's eyes trembled again, and he said, "I will tell you now. Your father is imprisoned in the Tower of Eternal Night." Tower of Eternal Night. Nietian's eyes trembled, and he asked, "Where is this place?" The Tower of Eternal Night is a forbidden area of the Sacred Assembly, and also a place used by the Sacred Assembly to imprison important prisoners. Bu Chinchio said solemnly, "The people of the 9 realms believe that the Dark Sea prison is the most heavily guarded prison. But compared to the Tower of Eternal Night, the Dark Sea prison is not worth mentioning. Those imprisoned in the Dark Sea prison have a chance to escape as long as they are strong enough. But those imprisoned in the Tower of Eternal Night will never be able to escape." "Why?" Nietian's eyes trembled, and his voice changed slightly. Nietian had heard of the Dark Sea's Black Prison before. Yi Qinghai had been imprisoned in the Dark Sea's Black Prison and had successfully escaped. But according to Bu Chinchio, the Tower of Eternal Night was a place even more terrifying than the Dark Sea prison. The entrance to the Tower of Eternal Night is a huge space-time seal vortex, and that vortex can only be entered but not exited. Bu Chinchio said with a cold smile, "For hundreds of thousands of years, no one who has been imprisoned in the Tower of Eternal Night has ever come out. Even a peak paramount god can't break the space-time seal vortex of the Tower of Eternal Night." Nietian's face stiffened, and then he took a step forward and asked in a deep voice. Bu Chinchio laughed and shook his head. "I have read about the Tower of Eternal Night. That space-time seal vortex, even saints can't open it. To open the Tower of Eternal Night, one must use a special method. But as for what this method is, no one knows." "Impossible," Nietian roared, and his expression was somewhat agitated. "The Tower of Eternal Night can definitely be opened." Bu Chinchio looked at Nietian, and his eyes couldn't help but tremble. "Nietian, this seat knows you can't accept it, but this is the truth. Although the Tower of Eternal Night belongs to the Holy Parliament, no one knows what the essence of the Tower of Eternal Night is. The Tower of Eternal Night, maybe it is a saint tool, maybe it is a different dimension, or maybe it is a pure space-time vortex, and anyone who enters it will be crushed by the space-time storm. So this seat guesses that your father died in the Tower of Eternal Night long ago." "Impossible." Nietian's blood and chi surged, and his eyes turned red as he roared in a deep voice. Chapter 1881. Bu Chinchio suddenly said that Nietian's father might already be dead, which made Nietian unable to accept it. "Nietian, calm down." The slaughter demon looked at Nietian and let out a low growl. Then, with a plain tone, he said, "All of this is just Bu Chinchio's speculation. Even if your father is imprisoned in the Tower of Eternal Night, he might not be dead. The entrance to the Eternal Night Tower is just a space-time vortex seal. As long as you are strong enough, you can break the seal. Nietian was taken aback for a moment, then calmed down a lot. Everything just now was Wu Qianqiu's guess. It wasn't true. Nietian pondered for a moment. Calamity 9 deities shouldn't dare to kill Nie Fenghua. After all, the latter was the young alliance master of Wind and Cloud Alliance. At this time, Wu Qianqiu suddenly let out a miserable howl. Then his whole body twitched violently, as if he had suffered a powerful impact. Nie Tian's eyes suddenly narrowed, and he cried out in alarm. What's wrong with him? Slaughter Demon Venerable's reaction was very calm. It said faintly, Wu Qianqiu has lost his Black Lotus body, and only a remnant soul is left. The slaughter curse can no longer be suppressed. Nie Tian was stunned for a moment. Then he asked, Lord Demon Venerable, do you have a way to protect him? Wu Qianqiu must know something, and Nie Tian didn't want him to die so soon. Slaughter Demon Venerable shook his head helplessly and said, the reason why Wu Qianqiu could suppress the slaughter curse before was because he had absorbed a large amount of bloodline power. However, this bloodline power also made the curse stronger while suppressing the slaughter curse. Right now, his slaughter curse is too strong, and even I can't do anything about it. At this time, Wu Qianqiu let out another miserable howl. His whole body had become distorted, and his body began to be torn apart piece by piece. Nie Tian couldn't help but frown when he saw this scene. What Wu Qianqiu was suffering at this moment was the pain of his soul being torn apart. This kind of pain was indescribable. Nie Tian, give him a quick death. The massacring demon Venerable looked at Nie Tian and said calmly. Nie Tian's eyebrows furrowed as he nodded. Killing Wu Qianqiu now would save him a lot of pain. Nie Tian. But at this time, Wu Qianqiu roared and directly pounced towards Nie Tian, saying, Revenge, revenge, avenge me. Nie Tian couldn't help but narrow his eyes. Even at the brink of death, Wu Qianqiu was still thinking about revenge. It was clear how much he hated Huijioshan. Wu Qianqiu, don't worry. I will definitely kill 9 God Calamity with my own hands. Nie Tian spoke in a low voice. He then took a step forward and a sharp sword intent gushed out from his body, directly piercing through Wu Qianqiu. The latter's body instantly crumbled. Nie Tian, remember your words. Kill 9 God Calamity. You must kill 9 God Calamity. At the last moment, Wu Qianqiu let out a mournful cry, and the last wisp of his consciousness completely dissipated. Nie Tian watched as Wu Qianqiu's remnant soul dissipated, and his eyes couldn't help but flicker. Wu Qianqiu's hatred for 9 God Calamity was too intense. Even at the moment when his soul was torn apart, he didn't forget to take revenge. Wu Qianqiu, a legendary expert of the 9 domains, the former president of the Holy Parliament, a person who once stood at the peak of the 9 domains, died in the end with a heart full of resentment and unwillingness. Nie Tian let out a sigh, and his heart was filled with many emotions. But the thing he was most concerned about was the Tower of Eternal Night. Wu Qianqiu's death was too sudden, and there were many things about the Tower of Eternal Night that he didn't mention. Most importantly, Nie Tian didn't know where the Tower of Eternal Night was. Nie Tian, you're too weak now. Even if you know where the Tower of Eternal Night is, you won't be able to save your father with your strength. Slaughtering Demon Venerable could tell what Nie Tian was thinking and said, the thing you need to do now is to increase your strength. Nie Tian's expression turned slightly ugly, and he couldn't help but look into the distance. Although slaughtering Demon Venerable's words were a blow to him, it was the truth. Nie Tian was still too weak. Killing Wu Qianqiu was already so difficult, and killing 9 God Calamity was no different from a fool's dream. Nie Tian, I will help Rui Qinyu fuse the slaughter inheritance, and she will become the new owner of the Path of Slaughter. After a moment, slaughtering Demon Venerable said, the fusion of the inheritance will take several months. I will restore the Path of Slaughter to its original form, and You just need to put the path of slaughter into the 9 superbs. Okay. Nietian didn't think too much about it and nodded. He also wanted to see what the path of slaughter's original form looked like. Tell Rui Qinyu to come out. Slaughtering demon Venerable nodded and said, I will temporarily close the path of slaughter. As for the others, I will send them to the 9th floor. You bring everyone out of the path of slaughter. Okay. Nietian nodded, then told Rui Qinyu to come out from the 9 superbs. The two exchanged a few words before Nietian directly left the Myriad Saints' ruins and returned to the 9th floor. Young master, Yi Qinghai shouted in surprise when he saw Nietian's figure appear. Old Hai, Lord Guiwu, are you all right? Nietian blurred in emotion, appearing next to Yi Qinghai and Guiwu Guangsha. He scanned them with his divine sense to make sure their lives weren't in danger. Only then did he relax. Young master, where's Bawu Qinxiu? Yi Qinghai asked in surprise when he saw Nietian come out by himself. He had seen Bawu Qinxiu and Nietian enter the 10th floor together, but they were nowhere to be seen. He's dead. Nietian nodded. Dead? Yi Qinghai and Guiwu Guangsha exclaimed in shock. Bawu Qinxiu was a peak paramount god, and his Black Lotus was even more powerful than before. Who could possibly be strong enough to kill Bawu Qinxiu? I encountered the divine soul of slaughtering demon Venerable on the 10th floor. Bawu Qinxiu died in the slaughtering formation set up by Lord Slaughtering Demon Venerable. Nietian nodded indifferently, not mentioning himself. Instead, he pushed all the blame onto Slaughtering Demon Venerable. If he told Yi Qinghai and Guiwu Guangsha that he was the one who killed Bawu Qinxiu, their jaws would definitely drop to the ground. Yi Qinghai and Guiwu Guangsha sucked in a mouthful of cold air as they made guesses in their hearts. If the slaughtered demon Venerable's divine soul was able to kill Bawu Qinxiu, then how monstrous would its true body be? Yi Qinghai and Guiwu Guangsha concluded that the slaughtering demon Venerable Nietian was talking about was definitely a saint-level existence. Young master, did Bawu Qinxiu say anything before he died? At this time, Yi Qinghai suddenly thought of something and asked with a burning gaze. He did. Nietian nodded. He obviously knew what Yi Qinghai was concerned about. What did he say? Yi Qinghai's eyes flickered with excitement. Nietian nodded solemnly and said, Elder Hai, let's get out of here first. I'll tell you everything after we return to Slaughter City. Chapter 1882. Then, Nietian waited for a while on the 9th floor. Soon, a large number of people arrived, and he asked everyone to enter the 9 superbs. With Yi Qinghai and Guiwu Guangsha, the two peak experts, watching over them, everyone was very well-behaved and obediently entered the 9 extremities. Nietian took the 9 superbs and entered the slaughtering gate on the 9th floor. Time and space changed instantly, and Nietian appeared in the air. Above his head was a blood-red vortex. It was the slaughtering path. At this time, Nietian had arrived at the place where he had entered the slaughtering path. Someone came out from the slaughtering path. Just as Nietian's figure appeared, a surprised voice came from below. 2 black-clothed men looked at Nietian with shock and shouted, He's the new king of slaughter. Nietian looked at the 2 cultivators in black and said with a faint smile, I'm not the only one who came out from the slaughtering path. The 2 cultivators in black were stunned, and their faces stiffened. They didn't know what Nietian meant. Nietian's lips curled into a smile. With a thought, the 9 superbs opened and hundreds of figures appeared in the air. The 2 cultivators in black were stunned when they saw this. They couldn't understand what was going on. Everyone appeared in the air and looked dazed. They didn't know what was going on. What's going on? We just entered the slaughtering path, and it brought us out again? Someone was very unhappy and shouted, Yes, the slaughtering path isn't over yet. I still want to go back. The others shouted, Old Hai, I'll leave these people to you. Nietian looked at Yi Qinghai and said calmly. Yi Qinghai nodded, after which he took a step forwards as his aura gushed forth, releasing a terrifying pressure. Everyone could feel the terrifying pressure. Many of the weaker cultivators had unsightly expressions on their faces. Everyone, listen up. The slaughtering path is over. It won't happen again in the future. Yi Qinghai's voice was like thunder. He looked at everyone and said in a deep voice, "Leave now." Leave? I spent a lot of effort to get the slaughter token, and it wasn't easy for me to enter the path of slaughter. You want us to leave just like that? What is this? Yes. We can't leave. The path of slaughter must continue. The seal on my body hasn't been undone yet. I came to the path of slaughter to find excitement. Even if I die, I will die on the path of slaughter. The reaction of the crowd was very intense. Most people did not want to leave. Yi Qinghai's face sank. He did not expect these people to be so unafraid of death. They actually did not want to leave. It was a great thing to be able to leave the path of slaughter alive, but these people didn't cherish it. I'll say it again, get lost. Yi Qinghai didn't have the time to waste on these people. With a deep roar, his whole body released a terrifying killing intent. Everyone's faces stiffened. Their eyes flickered with fear as they looked at Yi Qinghai in horror. At this moment, Yi Qinghai was truly enraged. If these people were to continue pestering him, he would really kill them. But even so, there were still people who were not afraid of death coming forward. You can let us leave, but you have to give us an explanation. Why did the path of slaughter suddenly end? A burly martial artist jumped out and shouted at Yi Qinghai, "Yes, we want an explanation." The others echoed one after another. The scene seemed to be going out of control. Yi Qinghai's face sank, and the killing intent in his eyes became obvious. He took a step forward and directly slapped with his palm. Bang! The palm shadow swept past, and with a muffled sound, the martial artist who jumped out and shouted was directly blasted into a pool of blood. He did not even have the chance to scream. Hiss! The sudden scene caused everyone to gasp. Their gazes towards Yi Qinghai had completely changed. They were filled with shock and fear. No one expected that Yi Qinghai would really dare to kill people. This is the explanation. Yi Qinghai growled, and his wolf-like eyes swept across everyone. He said in a deep voice, "Does anyone else want to explain?" The scene was dead silent. At this moment, everyone knew that if they angered Yi Qinghai, the latter would really kill everyone. Seeing that no one dared to speak, Yi Qinghai's eyes darkened, and he roared, "Scram!" This time, no one dared to hesitate, and one by one, they leaped away. In just a moment, everyone's figure disappeared. Nietian shook his head and smiled. Why did these people have to suffer? They were only willing to leave after someone died. In any case, these people who came to the domain of darkness were not good people. It did not matter if one or two died. "Young master, let's go." Seeing that everyone had left, Yi Qinghai's aura dispersed, and he came to Nietian's side and said respectfully, "Wait a moment." Nietian smiled faintly, then pointed to the blood vortex in the air and said, "I still want to take this thing away." Path of slaughter? Yi Qinghai and Guiwu Guangsha were stunned at the same time. They did not expect that Nietian would actually want to take the path of slaughter away. "Young master, are you already the owner of the path of slaughter?" Yi Qinghai calmed down and asked in horror. "I'm not." Nietian smiled faintly and briefly explained about the path of slaughter. Yi Qinghai and Guiwu Guangsha were shocked. They did not expect that Nietian and the others would experience such a thing on the 10th floor. "I also want to see what the original form of the path of slaughter looks like." Nietian stared at the blood vortex and said with a burning gaze, "Bang!" At this moment, the blood vortex in the air suddenly shook, and an endless bloody aura spread out, filling the entire heaven and earth. The figures of Nietian and the others moved, and they retreated a few thousand meters away. At this moment, the huge blood altar moved, and the surrounding stone pillars collapsed one after another. A dense, bloody aura circulated, and the entire heaven and earth was enveloped by the bloody aura, giving people an extremely sinister feeling. Nietian felt a terrifying power surging in the demonic god bloodline within his body, and it seemed like it could go berserk at any time. Extreme demonic force. Nietian's eyes narrowed, and he cried out in his heart. He reacted. The berserk power within his body was the extreme demonic force that Fat Cat had mentioned. No wonder Fat Cat did not allow Nie Tian to fuse with the Slaughter inheritance. The Slaughter Chi indeed had a strong stimulating effect on the extreme demonic force. At this moment, the Path of Slaughter revealed its original form, and the Slaughter Chi in the air caused the extreme demonic force within Nie Tian's body to produce an intense reaction. If he fused with the Slaughter inheritance, the extreme demonic force would be completely stimulated, and Nie Tian would definitely lose control of himself. After a moment, the blood vortex in the air collapsed and disappeared, and a strange scarlet object appeared in the sky. Looking from afar, it looked like a huge pillar. However, if one looked carefully, they would discover that the Path of Slaughter was made up of 9 scarlet rings stacked together. This is the original form of the Path of Slaughter. Nie Tian looked at the 9 scarlet rings, and his eyes slightly moved as he said in his heart. Chapter 1883. Nie Tian couldn't help smiling as he looked at the 9 rings of slaughter. The Path of Slaughter's form was out of his expectations. At this time, the 9 rings of slaughter suddenly moved, flying towards Nie Tian. Yi Qinghai couldn't help but become nervous upon seeing this, but Nie Tian smiled faintly, hinting the former to relax. Nie Tian extended his palm, taking the 9 rings of slaughter into his palm, and then put them into the 9 extreme. Next, the Slaughter Demon Venerable would fuse the Slaughter inheritance for Rui Qinyu. This process would take several months, so Nie Tian didn't have to worry about it. Yi Qinghai and Guiwu Guangsha were dumbfounded as they watched from the side. They couldn't understand Nie Tian more and more. "Oh hi, Lord Guiwu, let's go." Nie Tian didn't waste any more time and directly left. Yi Qinghai and Guiwu Guangsha followed. Half a day later, Yi Qinghai and Guiwu Guangsha brought Nie Tian to Slaughter City's City Lord's mansion. This was originally the Black Lotus King's residence. But now, the Black Lotus King had died tragically, and most of the 12 Lotus Lords had also died. The remaining few had also disappeared without a trace. The entire Black Lotus had already fallen apart, so the City Lord's mansion had become an ownerless land. At this time, Nie Tian and the others were sitting in the main hall of Slaughter City's City Lord's mansion, preparing to discuss some matters. Jian Jingyun and the others also walked out of the 9 extreme and sat in the main hall. "Young master." Yi Qinghai looked at Nie Tian, his eyes shining brightly. He really wanted to know what Wu Qianxiu had said to Nie Tian before his death. "Oh hi." Nie Tian naturally knew what Yi Qinghai wanted to ask, but he interrupted him with a faint smile. "Everyone has worked hard these days. Take a good rest first. With the Black Lotus King's death, Slaughter City is still unstable. In the next few days, I'll have to trouble Old Hai and Lord Guiwu to restore Slaughter City's stability." "Yes." Yi Qinghai frowned and immediately understood that Nie Tian didn't want to mention Nie Fenghua's matter in front of so many people, so he quickly nodded in agreement. "No problem," Guiwu Guangsha replied with a faint smile. Although Slaughter City was the Black Lotus lair, the residents here weren't any different from those in the outside world. Nie Tian didn't want the Black Lotus matters to affect the residents here. After that, Nie Tian made a few more arrangements before everyone left the hall. Over the past few days in the path of massacre, everyone had suffered some injuries. Moreover, the bloodmark seal within Jian Jingyun and the others had not been removed yet. Therefore, Nie Tian decided to wait until everyone had completely recovered before leaving this place. Very quickly, there were only 3 people left in the hall: Nie Tian, Yi Qinghai, and Guiwu Guangsha. Nie Tian had specially transmitted a message to Yi Qinghai and Ghost Marshal Guangsha to stay behind, as he had something to say to the 2 of them. "Young master, did Wu Qianxiu say something bad before he died?" Yi Qinghai anxiously asked when he saw that everyone had left. "Yes." Nie Tian took a deep breath and nodded. He didn't conceal anything and repeated everything that Wu Qianxiu said before he died. "Master is imprisoned in the Eternal Night Tower." Yi Qinghai's complexion couldn't help but change after listening to Nie Tian's words, and his eyes trembled. He had never heard of the Eternal Night Tower, and he didn't even know what it was. Nye Tian, what exactly is the Eternal Night Tower? Gue Wu Sha wrinkled his brows and couldn't help but ask. He had never heard of the Eternal Night Tower either. According to Bu Wu Qianxiu, the Eternal Night Tower is a forbidden area, specially used to imprison the important prisoners of the Holy Parliament. Yet Tian's complexion was somewhat grave as he said, "As for what exactly the Eternal Night Tower is, no one knows." This, Gue Wu Sha's complexion stiffened, and he didn't know what to say for a moment. At this moment, Yi Qinghai's complexion was very unsightly. Although he now knew where Nye Fenghua was imprisoned, his mood was even heavier than before. From Bu Wu Qianxiu's words, the Eternal Night Tower was simply a land of death, and anyone who entered it would undoubtedly die. "Young master, what should we do next?" After a moment, Yi Qinghai calmed down a little, looked at Nye Tian, and asked in a heavy voice. Nye Tian shook his head and said with a bitter smile, "I also don't know what to do." At this moment, Nye Tian really didn't know what to do. Of course, he wanted to rescue his father, but this matter was really not easy. Not to mention that Nye Tian didn't know what the Eternal Night Tower was. He also didn't know where the Eternal Night Tower was. Even if he knew, with his current strength, it was basically impossible for him to save his father. Although he already had Yi Qinghai and Gue Wu Sha, two peak experts, by his side, such combat power was still too lacking if he wanted to challenge the Holy Parliament. Nye Tian judged that with the battle strength of Yi Qinghai and Gue Wu Sha, not to mention Calamity 9, even the vice president of the Holy Parliament, Nangong Duxiu, wouldn't be a match for them. Strength, it was still strength. Nye Tian's strength was too weak, and this was the main reason why he couldn't save his father. Yi Qinghai and Gue Wu Sha didn't know what to say at this moment, and could only lower their heads in silence. After thinking for a long time, Nye Tian finally opened his mouth. He looked at Yi Qinghai and said, "Old Hai, I'm going to temporarily not care about my father's matter. I'll leave it to you to inquire about the situation of the Eternal Night Tower." "Yes." Yi Qinghai nodded heavily and said, "Young master, rest assured, Yi Qinghai will definitely find the location of the Eternal Night Tower." Nye Tian's gaze slightly tightened, and he stared at Yi Qinghai and said, "Old Hai, promise me, after you find the Eternal Night Tower, don't act alone. You must wait for me." Nye Tian's biggest worry for Yi Qinghai to find the Eternal Night Tower was that the latter would find the Eternal Night Tower, and in his haste to save his father, pay for it with his life. In Nye Tian's heart, Yi Qinghai's position was the same as his parents'. After all, when Nye Tian was young, Yi Qinghai was the only person who accompanied him. "Young master, this old servant promises you," Yi Qinghai said emotionally. He naturally knew that Nye Tian was afraid that something would happen to him, and that was why he said this. "Old Hai, I'll leave father's matter to you." Nye Tian slightly nodded. He believed that with Yi Qinghai's means, he would definitely be able to find the Eternal Night Tower. Next, Nye Tian's gaze fell on Gue Wu Sha, and he lightly sighed and said, "Lord Gu, you already know about Elder Jian's matter. What do you plan to do?" Gue Wu Sha frowned, and his expression was somewhat unsightly. He said, "I never thought that the person who attacked Jian Qingxi would be the Xingtian Alliance's master, Jiang Lai. His strength is already at the peak of the paramount god realm, and in the 9 major realms, there are less than a handful of people who can match him in strength. It will be difficult to rescue Jian Qingxi from his hands." The word difficult revealed the helplessness in Gue Wu Sha's heart. He and Jian Qingxi were best friends, and he had never given up on investigating Jian Qingxi's matter. However, he was still a member of the Gue Wu clan, and if he publicly made an enemy out of Jiang Lai, he might implicate the entire Gue Wu clan. The Xingtian Alliance's strength in the 9 major realms was comparable to the Holy Parliament and Wind and Cloud Alliance. Even if the Jin clan and Gue Wu clan joined forces, they would definitely not be a match for the Xingtian Alliance. Chapter 1884. The atmosphere in the hall, was silent for a while. At this time, Nietian suddenly thought of something and said, "Lord Guiwu, the Sword Elder once told me to say something to you when I see you." "What is it?" Guiwu Kwangsha was startled and asked. "The Sword Elder asked me to tell you. Do you still remember the old friend from the Evil Edge sword tournament?" Nietian's eyes narrowed and said. This sentence was proof of recognition. Back then, Jian Qingqi was afraid that Nietian would not believe him after finding Guiwu Kwangsha. So he said this. Yes, this to sound like Jian Qingqi's tone. Guiwu Kwangsha seemed to recall something and said with a smile, "Lord Guiwu, what is the Evil Edge sword tournament?" Nietian frowned and suddenly asked, "The Evil Edge sword tournament is a grand meeting of the sword doctrine of the 9 domains. It is held once every 30,000 years. It is a sword doctrine competition, but only young swordsmen under 30,000 years old are allowed to participate. Back then, Jian Qingqi and I met at the Evil Edge sword tournament, and we became close friends." Guiwu Kwangsha said faintly, and a trace of fascination flashed in his eyes. It was obvious that he was thinking of something back then. The Evil Edge sword tournament sounds interesting. Nietian faintly smiled. A strange arc appeared at the corner of his mouth as he said, "Lord Guiwu, can you tell me more about the Evil Edge sword competition?" "Of course." Guiwu Kwangsha nodded and said, "In the 9 domains, there is an organization of swordsmen called the Shenwu Sword Pagoda. The Shenwu Sword Pagoda has 2 sword masters, the Divine Sword Master and the Martial Sword Master. These 2 are the supreme existences of the Sword Pagoda and also represent the pinnacle of the sword doctrine of the 9 domains. The Evil Edge sword tournament was initiated by the Shenwu Sword Pagoda. It invited all the swordsmen in the world to compete with swords in the Evil Edge Sea. It is said that the first divine sword master of the Shenwu Sword Pagoda was an extremely powerful swordsman. His sword doctrine had reached the 6th stage of the sword doctrine of the God Realm, the supreme legendary realm of sword and martial unity. Moreover, this first divine sword master left his sword doctrine inheritance in the Shenwu Sword Pagoda and was called the Legend of Shenwu. Unfortunately, in the past hundreds of thousands of years, no swordsman had obtained the recognition of this godly sword master. That's why the Legend of Shenwu is still sealed in the Shenwu Sword Pagoda. The Divine Martial Sword Pagoda used to be the strongest force in the 9 territories. At its peak, even the Sacred Parliament and the 2 alliances couldn't compete with it. But after the first Divine Sword Master, no one else in the Divine Martial Sword Pagoda has reached the Paragon Legend level. As a result, the Divine Martial Sword Pagoda became much weaker. However, the Divine Martial Sword Pagoda is still one of the most powerful forces in the 9 realms. It's only slightly weaker than the One Alliance or the One Alliance. One Alliance, 2 alliances, these are the 3 strongest forces in the 9 realms, and they refer to the Holy Parliament, Wind and Cloud Alliance, and Xingtian Alliance. The Divine Martial Sword Pagoda was only slightly weaker than the 1 and 2 alliances, but it could be considered the 4th strongest force in the 9 realms. Hearing Guiwu Kwangsha's words, Nietian's eyes lit up, and he couldn't help feeling his blood boil as he asked, "Lord Guiwu, I would like to know, what are the benefits of participating in the Demonic Peak Sword Discourse?" "Of course, there are a lot of benefits." Guiwu Kwangsha was stunned for a moment. Then he smiled and said, "The Demonic Peak Sword Discourse is a competition of swords and martial arts. Any genius swordsman who enters the top 10 will enter the Demonic Peak Divine Martial Record. Once they enter the record, they will be qualified to enter the Divine Martial Sword Pagoda and have a chance to merge with the Legend of Shenwu." "That's not bad." Nietian smiled faintly. The Legend of Shenwu was a sword inheritance left behind by a swordsman who had reached the legendary realm of sword and martial as one. To any swordsman, it was a fatal temptation. However, Nietian didn't care about the Legend of Shenwu at all. He didn't even want a sage-level inheritance, so why would he care about a sword inheritance? In his opinion, the legendary realm of sword and martial as one wasn't that far away. Because he had such a swordsman by his side, Di Shi Tian, Nie Tian thought that maybe Sure Tian also knew about the divine martial sword pagoda. Are there any other benefits? Nie Tian's eyes flickered as he continued to ask. The ghost martial Wild Sand was stunned, as he never thought that Nie Tian's reaction would be so calm. The Evil Edge divine martial record and the legend of the divine martial were things that every swordsman in the 9 domains yearned for even in their dreams. However, Nie Tian had an indifferent expression on his face. Gue Wu Kuang Sha's face stiffened, but he still continued to say, the top 3 of the demonic peak sword discourse can not only enter the divine martial sword pagoda, but also directly become the divine martial sword soul. What do you mean? Nie Tian was stunned, not understanding what Gue Wu Kuangsha meant. Gue Wu Kuangsha laughed and said, the swordsmen of the divine martial sword pagoda are strictly divided. The strongest is the sword master, followed by the divine martial sword soul, and below the sword soul is the sword edge, and below the sword edge is the sword edge, sword light, and other ordinary swordsmen. In the divine martial sword pagoda, swordsmen who can become the divine martial sword soul are all qualified to be groomed as the next divine martial sword master. I see. Nie Tian smiled faintly. He did not expect the rules of the divine martial sword pagoda to be so complicated. Lord Gue Wu, what was your result when you participated in the demonic peak sword discourse? At this moment, Nie Tian laughed and asked curiously. Gue Wu Kuangsha was stunned. Then he smiled and said, back then, Jian Qingqi and I participated in the demonic peak sword discourse together. He was the 2nd earth sword, and I was the 3rd mortal sword. The top 3 of the demonic peak sword discourse were the heaven sword, the earth sword, and the mortal sword. Nie Tian's eyes slightly froze, and he could not help but ask, who was the heaven sword back then? Jiang Lai. Gue Wu Kuangsha's eyes slightly froze, and he said name. Jiang Lai. Nie Tian's expression changed, and he could not help but feel strange. He had seen Jiang Lai before, and he had even fought with him. He did not realize that Jiang Lai was a swordsman, and he did not even feel the existence of any sword intent from Jiang Lai. In fact, he also had doubts before, but he felt that it was possible that Jiang Lai was a swordsman in the past, but he later encountered a bottleneck on the path of the sword, and gave up on the path of the sword. But now, it seemed that this guess was not correct. Jiang Lai participated in the demonic peak sword discourse together with Jian Qingqi and Gue Wu Kuangsha, and obtained the title of Heaven Sword. His talent in the way of his sword was faintly above Jian Qingqi and Gue Wu Kuangsha. Currently, Gue Wu Kuangsha was already at the unity of sword and martial realm. If Jiang Lai encountered a bottleneck on the path of the sword, it would be unreasonable. Nie Tian thought for a moment, and asked Gue Wu Kuangsha about the doubt in his heart. Gue Wu Kuangsha frowned and said, I have not seen Jiang Lai for hundreds of thousands of years. I have also heard that ever since the demonic peak sword discourse, he has never used a sword again. This is indeed puzzling. But his current strength is already strong enough. In the 9 domains, there are very few people who are his match. To him, it does not matter if he uses a sword or not. Nie Tian curled his lips. Gue Wu Kuangsha's words were not without reason. In the 9 domains, there were indeed very few people who could make Jiang Lai use his sword. However, Nie Tian still found it strange. He had never seen a person who could restrain his sword intent so perfectly.